Do do do, theme song. Do do do, I'm broke, so this is my theme song. Do do do, just imagine this is an awesome theme song. Do do, theme song. Left of the box. Hello, welcome to Left of the Box. Bonjour, bienvenue. I'm Sandy. Welcome, welcome, welcome on this very special day. It is Trans Visibility Day and Easter. It's like a 2-for-1. It's my favorite candy holiday, and it's a day celebrating people like me. I'm non-binary. I'll tell you a little bit more about that when we bring on our very special guest, Jeff Wiggins. Yes, he is waiting in the wings to come on the show. And yeah, this is going to be a fun show, hopefully. Well, they're all fun, I would like to think. I'm still trying to figure out how to do a proper preamble. So far in the Sandbox, we have Kush Clark Kent, Looney Tunes 9000, Mudbuds, Teddy Cool, and Bob Bob. I still need to put a disclaimer at the top saying I won't know how to pronounce your name. But we got here in Canada the Renters' Bills of Rights that the Prime Minister thinks is he's made a promise about, and some other stuff. So without further delay, oh, and since I'm in this setup, when I bring somebody on, there's going to have to be just be patient with me. This setup takes a lot more brain power than I sometimes have. So without further delay, I'm bringing on the one, the only, the fantastic, spectacular Jeff Wiggins. Okay, just checking. We're not live yet. Just checking to make sure. Oh shit, we are live. God damn it! I forgot to put the other scene up first. This is going to be one of those streams. Hello, everyone. Welcome, Jeff.
Hey, everybody. Hey, Sandy.
Yeah, so normally I have to put in like an in-between screen saying like be right back or something of that sort, but if I forget to do that before I hit studio mode, then it really doesn't matter. And you get to see me stumble as I put this setup, which Jeff can't see because he's on a different program, so it gets a little bit more complicated. So Jeff, you're going to have to yell at me if I'm reading or showing a website you can't see because I forgot to share it with you.
This is all part of the process. It's part of the show. I think that part makes the show charming. So you're fine.
It's one of those things, like if I had a producer, then I could just blame them.
That is true. That is true. But no, thanks for having me.
Oh, this is great. So, turns out today, Trans Visibility Day, and unlike what a lot of people on the right seem to think, this has been a thing for a while. Because over...
No, I was about to say, yeah, someone was saying that it's more than a coincidence that President Joe Biden would select today of all days to be Trans Visibility Day as if it was taking away from Easter. So yeah. Continue, I'm sorry.
Well, it's just apparently Trans Visibility Day has been going on for 15 years, always on the same day. Easter is the one that's kind of like cramping the style of Trans Visibility Day by moving around all the time.
I mean, you know, there's some legit things that we can criticize President Joe Biden for, but this is not one of them.
Yeah. But it's the constant outrage from the right to find anything. It's like, how dare he actually acknowledge that today is the day that it's always been for the past 15 years. Oh, and happy Easter. You see, I like to think that this is a good thing that they're on the same day because, as I was saying, Easter is my favorite candy holiday. I'm not religious at all, but I do tend to celebrate the Christian holidays. That's more because of my upbringing. We used to celebrate them, but I've kind of, twisted them to mean what I want them to mean, kind of like what Christianity did with them in the first place. And
Well, happy Easter to
yeah,
everybody who celebrates.
yeah.
And I need to go get some discounted candy really soon because it has to be on sale right now.
Mm-hmm.
My orthodontist probably wouldn't be happy about that, but hey, discounted Easter candy is really good candy. So I'm going to have to take care
Mm-hmm.
of that.
Well, that's the thing that I would always do after Easter is go get the discounted candy, and I would get like 8 or 10 of the chocolate bunnies. Because what I do is I would then, as I say, butcher the bunnies, and I would chop them up into pieces, put them in baggies, because I don't binge eat chocolate. I nibble on it, and so then I would chop it up, keep them in the fridge, and then I could just have little pieces of chocolate here and there whenever I want. And that could last me months by doing that. But I went out yesterday to see about it, and it's very disappointing because the discounted Easter chocolate I had already been seeing was more than full price from a few years ago. Because the
Are we
prices are
talking
just
about are we talking about just chocolate bunnies, like nothing else? Just like the hollow chocolate bunnies that I'm picturing right now? Are those the ones you're talking about that you would
no.
dismember?
They're flat in chocolate, solid chocolate, but they're like the
Oh,
shape
okay.
of a bunny.
Okay. Okay.
And then I would
Okay.
just
Well,
take a knife to them and chop them up.
that's probably the most important part that I should be asking you about to see if everything's okay with you, but you're enjoying chocolate, so we're all good.
Mhm. Well, it's easier
My, I
to
think
chop.
my no,
It's
I'm sorry. I could say my go-to Easter candy would be well, I can't have peanut butter in the house because one of my family members is allergic to peanuts,
Mhm.
but the Reese's eggs are probably my go-to. Like if I'm
Yes.
far away from my house, I will probably go for those.
Yes, I like those as well. And I also like robin eggs, they're called.
Yes, those are good. Those are good. Yeah, those are good. Those are
Yeah.
really good. Good
Again,
choice.
there's chocolate that only comes out around Easter and candy that only comes around out at Easter that I absolutely love. And so I have a whole bunch of it on my wish list right now for anyone who is interested. But
Well, yeah, go out and get yourself some discounted candy.
yes. So before we get into it, I'd like to welcome you back on my show. This is now your second time, I believe, on my show.
Yes,
So I don't have to put you through the Canadian quiz again.
thank you. That was not good for me. I
It
was a
wasn't
geography minor, by the way. I don't
it
know if I've told you that. I was a geography minor in college.
it wasn't good for me either because I went back and I was going to clip it, but I realized I got so much wrong in it myself that it was embarrassing.
I mean, what are they going to do? Are they going to have you do like a citizenship test or something like that? You're all right.
Yeah. No, it's just it was frustrating because I'm still getting used to doing live streams and thinking on the off the cuff and things of that sort. And it's like these are things that I know, but in the moment we're just kind of not there in my brain.
Yeah, of course. That's
Like
how it works. I mean, look, that's why the bulk of my YouTube channel is scripted.
that's the nice
So,
thing about that, but yeah, like
absolutely.
I know what the capitals of all the provinces and territories are, even though I was incorrect when you were mentioning them. And I was just, like I know these things, and yet for some reason I got most of them wrong on that. And it was just like, okay, this is just way too embarrassing, so I can't post, I can't clip that. I can't clip your
Mm.
embarrassment at not knowing any of it. So,
It'd be like that sometimes. You're good. I'm sure whatever it was, you know it now. So like if
mhm.
you were to quiz yourself or have me quiz you, which wouldn't get you anywhere, I'm sure you got it now.
Yeah. But why don't you let people know who you are if this is their first time meeting the wonderful Jeff Wiggins?
Yeah. Jeff Wiggins, The Ohio State University. I am currently a YouTuber and a freelancer. I know Sandy from a while ago when we used to do work for the same platform. And again, I'm just happy to be here and excited that Sandy invited me on.
Hmm. Yeah. And so I guess I'll start off with, so we have a few things I wanted to cover today. So it's Trans Visibility Day, so we'll talk about a couple things with that. basically, we'll start with my personal experience with being non-binary. And then there's the Renters' Bills of Rights that has the Prime Minister of the country has talked about, which it's interesting. It's interesting. Some of the I want to be happy with something that the liberals present. But as always, it's one of those things like when you read between the lines, it might not be as good as they boast. And there's something I always say about the liberals is that they're very good at promising promises and announcing announcements. And I think a lot of people might be disappointed to find out that there's not much, well, we'll get into it. That, and I also wanted to answer a question from a very nice viewer of mine, somebody who I've had a few emails with behind the scenes, because she was wondering, being in a very conservative area, what's the point of voting? Because I'm somebody that's always telling people to vote. And she was wondering what my opinion is on that. And I'm like, you know what? I've mentioned it before. And she's like, I've seen all of your live streams. You haven't actually mentioned it. I'm like, God damn it, have I been doing this long? Because I know I've talked about it, so it must be in a video essay from way back when. But it's a very good point that I always tell people to go out and vote, but I never actually talk about the different reasons. Like if you're in an area that's extremely conservative and technically speaking, your vote won't matter. So what's the point of that? And I know I've touched on it in a video essay ages ago, thinking that I talked about it in a live stream. Like that's the thing when you've done this content long enough, things just kind of start to blur together. Like you know you've said something, and I was trying to get a video essay together, and it's like I know I've said this thing before, but trying to find where I've said it, it's like most of my video essays are scripted out, but every now and then I do ad-lib things in it too, so it's not like I can even rely on just doing a word search in the scripts. And it's just, you know, there's going to be a day on YouTube when you can search videos based on audio.
Right. Yeah.
And
I would love that.
I would love it, and I dread it.
For anybody who like wants to use your words against you or something like that, or figure out where you messed up.
Yeah, or just like, okay, so how many times did they say this word?
Well, I'm sure you go through this, but I know on my YouTube channel, when someone wants to accuse me of something, they'll say like, "Oh, well, you said this," and like they'll say it so strong that like I'm like, "Did I say that?" And then like I got to go back through the script, and even if I didn't trust the script or I ad-libbed, I'll like watch it again. Like, did I say no? It's usually not something I said; it's what they felt I said. So that another reason why I'm glad my show is scripted is because. Yeah, people will say I said some stuff, and I'm like, there's no way I actually said that. And then, 9 times out of 10, it's not even close.
Yeah, well, I get that an awful lot. And especially with the video essays when I'm like calling out Anna Kasparian or TYT, and I usually put a disclaimer like, this isn't me whining, this is me just stating my experience and all. And it's like, it doesn't matter. It still doesn't matter because they still put it in the comments that, oh, you're just crying, you're a snowflake about this. And it's like, God damn it. Or people just look at the thumbnails. Although I did have fun with it with this last one that, well, very recently, a day ago, because I don't necessarily respond to trolls because what's the point? They're just trolling. It's not a conversation. They don't care. But I have in one thumbnail that we need to prepare for PP, Pierre Poilievre, because he's going to be the next Prime Minister of Canada. I hate to break the news to people. And I kind of feel like I'm in this state of, in the movie Taken, where he's on the phone with his daughter and his daughter is about to be taken. And he's like, this is what you need to do to prepare. Like, I feel like I'm in that place with Canada right now. And I'd just like to say to all the government of Canada, I happen to have a very special set of skills. And I'm not going to go down without a fight. And so in the thumbnail, it has, we need to prepare for PP. And so this troll just puts, what specifically do you mean by we? And so I just put, people who think hot dogs are sandwiches.
I'm a person that thinks hot dogs are sandwiches.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the we. Anyone that thinks a hot dog is a sandwich needs to prepare for Pierre Poilievre.
I'll get ready then. Well, all right. You talk about me. I'll be ready. Just let me know.
Yeah. So I don't know, but sometimes I'm worried about kicking the hornet's nest sometimes because I really want to answer a lot of these people really snarkily sometimes, but you, you never know what kind of firestorm you might be setting yourself up for if you do that, and I just tend to ignore them for the most part. Although I remove any comments that might be offensive, like are using slurs towards trans folks and things of that sort. Like it doesn't get me, it doesn't get under my skin per se because it is what it is on here. But I don't want other of my viewers to be going through the comment sections on my videos and seeing slurs of any sort or things that might be upsetting and triggering. So I tend to remove those. But if there's just somebody calling me stupid or saying I don't know how to do my makeup or saying, oh, I didn't know Marilyn Manson had their own YouTube channel, I don't care.
Yeah. I was explaining to some people that I work with that a coworker of mine was like, I couldn't be a man, and she started cataloging all these things. And I was like, no, I could not be a woman because my peers who are women go through things that I will never go through, such as if someone were to disagree with me, no one mentions my body whatsoever. No one mentions my appearance. Every every other blue moon, someone would say something about my physicals. And I know you and a couple other of my TYT alum go through it all the time. Actually, it's all you ever go through.
Actually, you see, this is why I know I'm not a woman. I don't go through that all that often. Like I get the Marilyn
All that
Manson
often.
I get the Marilyn
But
Manson comment. I get some comments on my makeup occasionally. Um and the Marilyn Manson comment is usually the same as like I look like the undead or something of that sort, like a vampire, which thank you for the compliment if you do that.
and this is with respect to you being non-binary. I know you're
Yeah.
non-binary, but like
But the thing is that is
people
it. That is it. That's all I get.
really, well, congrats to you, because I know others.
Mm-hmm.
It's the first go-to. Like
Mm-hmm.
they're not even going to try to argue with what you said or try to pick apart your claims or arguments. It's your makeup, your hair, your body, and stuff like that. And so, hey, maybe after this, then we'll go straight for my looks, and I've got it coming. But I've got hundreds of videos online, and
Mm-hmm.
people rarely say something about how I look.
Yeah. No, it is a rarity for me as well. Well, a rarity in comparison to women. Because again, to the average male, it's probably more than what they get. But to the average woman, I tend to get far, far fewer comments along those lines. Um, which, I'll take it. I'm glad. It also means that I don't have much visibility. But, you gotta take your wins and your losses and stuff. And uh, it, I don't want to be harassed, so I'll enjoy it while I can.
I was about to say it's only a matter of time.
Mm-hmm. But
It's on its way.
yeah. So today is Trans Day of Visibility, and I myself am non-binary, which a lot of people would not necessarily know by looking at me. Which is why sorry, I have in the back of my brain a video essay that I'm working on about Anna Kasparian. And there's something that she said in one of her videos talking about the birthing people thing that always gets to me when she says the one time she was asked about it. And she says, well, I'm a woman, obviously. And it's like, well, what's so obvious about that? Because people would say the same thing about me, but I'm not. I just present female, but I'm not a woman.
I also want to know. So wait, is some of the things that she said in the past? Again, I would know. I have no idea. But some of the things she said in the past, is it all because someone asked her once,
Oh, in a medical setting.
where it's supposed to be?
Yeah, at her doctor's. That they asked her about that. But it
Oh,
wasn't just that. It was also an option on forums. So
but that's the thing about options is it's optional.
yeah. Yeah. No, the amount of work I've already put into this video essay, and I haven't even started the script yet, is just obscene. Like, I've gone through 5 appearances that she's done on other shows and literally put them in the video editing program. I have them split at all these different things, and I have in a Word document what the comments are that I find of note and things of that sort, so that I can easily find them if I need to. And now I have like all this information that I'm just trying to swirl together. But some of the things that she says that I think a lot of people have missed. Well, a lot of people don't remember or don't know of her second appearance on the Stitch and Adams show when she was on there with Shoe on Head. Um, you'd have to be aware of online drama to know who Shoe on Head is.
Okay, and I am not aware. So there we go.
Yeah. Some people in the chat would probably know. But at one point she says that, women basically have equal rights to men right now, so it's not a big deal. But this one I think you might find amusing. She also said, you know what? Race relations were just so much better in the 90s.
Oh, all right. Okay. Hey, all right. I will let you know that Benny, for your audience who does not know Benny is trans. And Benny just came out with a video, I believe it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, about something that was said by Anna on another podcast.
Yeah,
so
that's the iced coffee hour. I have that one too, all chopped up and ready to go. And so now I'm just trying to figure out the script and how to put it all together. And yeah, so it's still going to be a while before anyone sees that. And also, like, a lot of people might just think, again, it's what people think about the scripts versus what you actually mean by them. This isn't about Anna specifically. It's about, the discourse around the term birthing people. It's about people who aren't of the left or the right, basically a pendulum swinging back and forth. They're not in one spot any particular length. And, what drives people from the left over to the right? What can we do about it? How does trauma play a part in it? Like, there's all these other layers to it, and Anna just happens to be a good framing device for all of it.
So it was pretty much about the sentiment involved in her statement.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. That's gonna be cool. I don't know. I guess from my perspective, for medical forms that she may be filling out, and she feels a certain way about the options that are presented to her about how she identifies. I have those same options too. She's allowed to feel the way she feels, but also,
yeah, like, the thing is that she's coming from a place of a certain level of privilege where it's like, okay, yeah, obviously I'm a woman, is what she says. But it's not so obvious for me. So I run into this thing where I have to out myself every time if I want to be respected for who I am. So, like, I've been in a situation where I was on a panel discussion and it was all women that I was with. And in the audience, somebody was making the comment about, how much she appreciated seeing all these strong women voices up on there, and, how great it was that we were finally being heard and stuff. And I'm sitting there like, do I say something? Like, every time this comes up, I have to make an assessment. How safe am I to say it? Will it upset the audience? Am I taking away from this person's particular joy in the moment from saying, oh, well, actually, I'm not a woman? Like, how do I approach it? And, like, in that audience, the audience that I had there, I was probably safe to come out. But would they perceive me the same? Probably not.
right.
And so I have to think about that every time if I just want to be respected for who I am as somebody who's non-binary.
And I have no idea what that world is like. I mean, I'm the ways in which I identify myself are clear and apparent to everybody. I'm a Black man who, like, where's my shirt? Went to Ohio State. Like, all those things are clear and apparent. So I never really have to state who I am in order to gain respect. And actually, for just right quick, if I misgender you or misidentify you in any way, please correct me. I don't actually, now I'm like, have I done it? I'm probably have done it. My apologies.
Well, my preferred pronouns, for people who are wondering, I go by she, her, because I present female. It's easier that way. But for titles, I tend to go by Mr. Sir. If people can remember. If they don't, it is what it is. But also gender neutral terms. So instead of woman, folk or something of that sort. And I actually, that one will get under my skin more if people intentionally referred to me as a woman versus messing up pronouns. Because with the pronouns, I really, really could care less. So people can use she, her, they, them, he, him. I really, really could care less about the pronouns. But I don't like being put into the category of a woman. So all of the gender neutral person terms is preferable. But the reason why I say Mr. Sir, it's basically there aren't many gender neutral terms for a lot of what we use. And so you kind of have to pick one. So when it comes to titles, I'll do that. But if people mess up, and it happens with me. I've actually messed up with my own because I have such a long history of just always referring to myself as a woman. So I've even slipped up because of habit. If I'm out on the street and some random person refers to me as a woman or says miss or something of that sort, I'm not going to get upset because, again, I present woman as a female. I'm not going to get upset at the random stranger. I'm probably not going to correct them because what's the point if we're just passing by and I'm not going to really talk to them or anything again. And if it's people in my life, then, I understand, especially people who've known me for a long time, because it's the same thing with them. It's a habit of what they used to, how they used to know me, how they used to perceive me. And, it is like, it's, because it's like that doesn't get under my skin, and somebody intentionally doing it, while it could get bothersome at times, it doesn't really get me the way that they hope, because it's like I know they're just doing it to be an asshole, and it's a reflection of them.
Yeah, back to the trolls. Well, like I said, I think for me personally, it's something I didn't even want to put it in these terms, but it's kind of the reality where it is. If I'm out of practice, then I'll slip up all the time. So one good correction should get me where I'm going. So person, I will refer to you, person, folk, those terms.
Yeah. But it is, like, I know a lot of people like Anna tend to think that people will overreact if you accidentally misgender people, but that's not the case for the vast majority of times. Like, if it's an accident, it's an accident. It happens. And I have plenty of trans friends, and I run into the problem if I knew them before they transitioned and stuff, I will mess up sometimes because, again, it's habit. And so it's just trying to get past that, remember, that sort of thing. And so, yeah, people don't have to be concerned. She, her, Mr. Sir, folk, they, them. It's all good. It's all good.
All right. Yes.
I have these buttons right now that says not a man, not a woman.
Nice. Well, I am very much looking forward to that video. I'm sure you're going to cook with that one. It's something that you're clearly passionate about, so I'm sure you'll display that passion through the video.
Yeah. So before we get on to the actual, there's a couple things article-wise that I want to touch on with the Trans Visibility Day. Just a reminder to people who might be new to who I am. Yes, I am non-binary. That's what this flag is right here. This is the non-binary flag. I think I lucked out on the color scheme. Just saying. It's a pretty awesome color scheme. It hasn't been all that long that I've identified this way. Basically, it's once I joined social media. Because when I was on social media and I got exposed to other people who are non-binary, I got exposed to people, putting it in their pronouns and things of that, like putting their pronouns in their bios and things of that sort. And it finally really got me thinking about, like, actually, how do I identify? Because I've always felt out of place, but the few people I knew who were non-binary were nothing like me. And so then after all this exposure online, I just kind of took a moment and be like, okay, if I took how I present out of the equation, how do I actually feel? And it was like a light bulb moment, like it just total, oh, okay. Okay, I get it now. I'm non-binary. Because I just kind of always assumed, since I was assigned female at birth and I present female, therefore I must be female. But I look back in my life and I've been saying it out loud my entire life in different things that I was saying, how I was saying things, the way I perceived the world, that it took me this long in order to just kind of figure out, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense now. What I was saying before, how I was feeling. Like even memories back into high school and some of the things that I was thinking or trying to figure out, like, is this what it means to be a woman? This doesn't quite feel like it's, I don't know if this is me. And yeah, so it's always been there. I just didn't have the language for it. But then as soon as I kind of clued into it, it's like, okay, we're just going full speed, no looking back. This is me. I know it without a doubt, like 100% confident. Like this isn't even something that I have to, like, it wasn't, as soon as that clicked in me, I never had to second guess it. I knew. Like I knew. There was no doubt about it. And then I was able to get my birth certificate updated, my passport, my driver's license, all to reflect the gender X, So yeah, ever since.
If I may ask, so with the social media component of your life and what you've learned from that, how do you think things would have gone if social media wasn't a thing, or if those connections that you've gained were not realized?
I'd probably still be referring to myself as a woman,
Hmm.
even though, like I said, it never felt quite right. Like I said it, but it was like I was wearing a suit, a costume of some sort every time I said it. Like I felt so artificial.
Hmm.
And it's just something that I never really clued into because I didn't have the language for it. And like I said, the few non-binary people I knew were nothing like me. And now that I kind of understand it more and I embrace it more, I can't imagine what I would have been like, how I would have turned out if I had clued into it when I was a teenager. Like, would I be presenting as female as I do right now? I don't know. But I do know now there'd be times that I wish I could just present male sometimes when I'm feeling more of my masculine self. And it's something that I want to work on, do some voice training, maybe to see if I can get that, see if there's ways of doing my makeup to make it more subtly masculine features. But I can't, it's not, you can't just, for a lot of people, you can't just switch back and forth very easily. But there are times where I wish I could present more male. And there's certain spaces that I wish I could be accepted in because I've always been welcome into female spaces, but I'm not really accepted in them. Like I don't really fit in. Whereas with male spaces, if I get into them, I feel far more comfortable a lot of the times. Like I feel more like I fit in there. However, I have to get past that first gate in order to get there because I look female. So I really look forward to the day where I could actually just be accepted into a male space somewhere, like a boys club online or something, where they just kind of take me for who I am. Or the idea of being able to wear a men's suit, like have a tailor-made men's suit at an event that is actually required for suits. Like to me, that would just, oh, I'd love to have that, to be able to do that. Because I have no problems
I,
presenting female and hyper female at times, but I'd really like to lay out my masculine side sometimes.
As you were saying that, I was just trying to picture like environments where you would be welcome in masculine spaces just the way you are. And then, I can't really, I hope it's out there. I will put it that way. I
Yeah.
hope it's out there, but you know how those things get where you question or threaten masculinity and things get real. So
Yeah, well, it goes back to like high school where, you had the groups of friends and stuff, but there was so you have your larger group of friends that kind of orbit around each other, but then they usually section off into smaller groups, and then there's that group of boys in it. And I'd be the exception, you know, I'd be the one that was allowed into that group of boys because I was super chill. And it usually in those situations I'd always been the exception. Like even going back into elementary school, when it came to playing games at recess and lunch, I was the only girl playing with them. And it didn't take them long to just accept me as, not treat me any differently because of the way that I fit in with them. And then that carried on into high school and stuff. But you know, trying to find other spaces where I can just let my masculine side of me out for a breath of fresh air, that is
right.
something I would like to do at some point.
Okay. Yeah. I don't think I've heard you. I've known you for a little while. I don't think I've heard you say that before. So that's
Mm.
interesting.
Yeah. But it is something that I'm going to work on, see if I can do some voice training. It's so interesting because on the video editing program, I can lower my pitch. I'm like, oh my God, that's exactly how I would sound if I was a man. It's like, that is so awesome. But I can't do that automatically, and I wish I could. But in my experience with all the trans folks and stuff that I know, it's often easier for male to female voice training.
Kind
So,
of like I wonder what would
like, it would be
what
easier for you to sound like a woman than it would be for me to sound like a man.
I'm trying to picture what the response would be like if you did pitch your voice down in the editing software you use. Like, I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. I wonder if you might want to give that a shot. Or I mean, I don't know. How often when you're editing do you like play with that option and then, you know, to yourself, like before you even upload the video, you're like, oh, I actually
Mm-hmm.
enjoy this 5 minutes of this video here where I'm sounding the way I think I want to sound or I should
Mm-hmm.
sound.
Yeah, I haven't, like, there are videos in my brain, essays that I want to work on, where I'm thinking that could actually help, um, and be part of the video in a way. But so far, I guess I haven't really found the need for it.
Hmm.
Ding dong, ding dong, ding dong.
Just going to silence my phone.
Oh, that was your phone. Okay.
Yes, I have a very unique ringtone because I made it.
I didn't know if I didn't know if that was like your doorbell, your special or unique specific doorbell.
Well, technically, it was started on my phone because I wanted it to be my doorbell sound for when people call up to my apartment. But then I'm like,
Okay.
I rarely have visitors or people using that, and I kind of love it, so I want to be able to use it more. So I just made it my ringtone for
Got
notifications.
it. Okay.
Um, so yeah, there's a couple articles, like I said, that I thought we could touch on for this. And I'm going to do this transition properly this time.
Let's do it. It's gonna be great.
Yeah. So let's let's we'll be right back. Okay, had that. I think that one went well. I think I handled it. Jeff, you see the Government of Canada highlights
I can see
international.
it.
Okay, and
I can see it.
I can see it on my OBS screen, so I know people in the chat can see it. So
You are
I'm getting good at
dominating
this
this transition thing.
in more ways than one. So I just wanted to highlight that our the Canadian government highlights this. So we have the Government of Canada highlights International Transgender Day of Visibility, and this statement was made today. Today, the Honorable Marcy Ian, Minister for Women and Gender Equality and Youth, issued the following statement on International Transgender Day of Visibility. The Government of Canada remains clear. Trans women, trans men are men, and we continue to stand against hate whenever and wherever it occurs. There is a disturbing rise in anti-transgender hate, both in person and online, and it's important to recognize this is not just today, but every day. On this day, we honor the resilience and unbreakable spirit of transgender, two-spirit, and non-binary people and celebrate their diversity and many contributions. As we work towards building an inclusive Canada, we encourage Canadians to speak out against harmful impacts of transphobia and all forms of discrimination. And then, of course, they have to plug their government here. The federal 2S LGBTQIA+ action plan was created to address and prevent discrimination and stigma based on sexual orientation, sex characteristics, gender identity, and expression from emerging or worsening for future 2S LGBTQIA+ generations. The government remains committed to supporting organizations that do crucial work for gender diverse people. We will continue to prioritize building a safer and more inclusive country by funding initiatives that support 2S LGBTQIA+ communities. As announced previously, a call for proposals remain open. Okay, we don't need that part, but yeah. So I have a lot of qualms, a lot of issues with the Liberal government, Justin Trudeau in particular. One thing I've always thought they've done a fairly decent job on is the queer acceptance. Justin Trudeau has regularly spoken out against conservative leaders, both federal and provincial, when they try to pass their anti-trans legislation and stuff. And Justin Trudeau has come out and spoken strongly against it. And unlike a lot of the times when he does things like that, it actually comes across as authentic. Like, it actually feels like it's something he believes as opposed to something he's just performing. And so...
And I'm sorry, so the performance piece, are we saying that there are other things that he speaks out against or for, and it seems like more of a performance than what you're speaking of here?
Yes. Well,
Got it.
for
Go
me,
ahead.
the example that always sticks in my head is when he went to one of those graves that was discovered by a former residential school, and he went to one of them where there was supposed to be children, and he kneels down with a teddy bear, and a tear goes down his face, type thing. And that to me is super performative because of the policies that he does, because he also then takes the survivors of residential schools to court when they try to sue the government for damages done during this, or for Indigenous peoples not getting the medical care that they need and stuff. And he'll take them to court to fight back against these claims. And then he'll even, oh God damn it, what's the word when you once it's been ruled, you try to
Appeal?
Appeal, yeah. So he'll even appeal those cases and keep them. He spends almost as much money in court with Indigenous peoples as the government would actually just have to pay out. But he doesn't want to set the precedent. And so to me, when he does that sort of thing, that is performative. When he goes to that gravesite with that teddy bear, that is very performative. But with queer issues, you have the statements, but then you also have the policies put in place that, you know, things like this, the way that non-binary, transgender people have been included in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, things of that sort. So it comes across as more authentic when he talks about this issue. With other issues, not so much. Indigenous peoples being the one that sticks out in my brain the most, but even people living with disabilities, anything he says about that is so performative. People living with poverty, it gets under your, that can get really under your skin at times, because it's the policies that follow that aren't there. That, and we'll actually talk about one of those when we get to the Renters Bill of Rights.
All right.
So let's see, did I want to? So a little bit of news about this sort of thing that I thought, it might be. There's rarely ever like good news when it comes to Haya Rychek, but this is just kind of like, yeah, no, this she deserves this. Libs of TikTok founder Haya Rychek added to hate watch list as an anti-LGBTQ extremist.
I don't know a lot about her, but I would imagine that she's going to wear it as a badge of honor, meaning if I am put on this watch list, it means I'm doing something good. Or they're trying to silence and censor me, but I will not be those, like something like that. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
It actually has the extremist info, her born year, 1995. So how old would that make her?
Wait, I'm sorry, what year?
1995.
Oh gosh, she's young. She's like 28.
Well, the thing is that she comes across as a 35-year-old with the personality of a 15-year-old.
I'm going to say I don't know much about her, but I have heard that she feels like queer and trans communities are like a cult, something like a teenager would say, or an inexperienced person would say, which teenagers are inexperienced. So yes, yeah. So I'm sorry, when you first said the year, I'm like, there's no way she's in her 20s. Like, there's no way. No. Yeah, she, depending on when her birthday is, she's 28 or 29. So
yeah. Well, there was that interview that she did with Taylor Lorenz, and in it I mocked her, and it's like, the thing is that before I watched it, I kind of did a character voice of, somebody who is like over the top, like, oh my god, I can't believe, like, it's all about the truth, like, that is what I'm in here for. I'm in here for the truth, and I'm trying to do like this over the top character. I don't do impressions, I do over the top characters. And then when I saw her, I'm like, oh my god, it's the same. Like, here I am trying to be like over the top caricature of this type of person, but she was exactly that, and I'm like, I'm okay.
So I watched her when I was still doing my freelance work for the previous company. I watched her interview with Tucker Carlson. And so by the time the debate or interview with Taylor came, I was less interested, because I was like, well, here's what's going to happen on Twitter. People are going to chop it up and say, oh, Taylor dominated her because she said this thing, and clip it up. But then the other side is going to say, oh, got her, when it comes to Chaya, because some, I don't know, 15-second clip. So I was like, I'm not even interested in this time. But from a little bit I know, yeah, it's not like she's impressive or smart or cunning or witty or intelligent or anything like that. Congrats on the success for being so young, though. I'll tell her that much. That's dope.
Oh, like, she is spectacularly uninteresting. If it was just, if she didn't have this platform, if she didn't have this reach, if she didn't find this one gimmick, there's nothing about her that's interesting. She's so, like, she can't think critically at all. She's so vapid in everything she does, and she sounds like and has the personality of a teenager, but from what I've heard, is she grew up in a very strict religious cult. and wasn't really exposed to much outside. So it's like, that would explain it.
I would just, when people are said to have being raised in that way, I just would like to know their biblical doctrine and where they can get some of their stuff from. That's all.
Mhm.
I would like to see. I want her to point to me where she gets some of the, if she still prescribes to be Christian, by the way. I don't know if she does or does not,
No, I
but
believe she's Jewish.
she's Jewish. Okay, I can say. That's
Yeah.
even more. Oh,
Yeah,
well,
because
okay, well,
yeah, because she talks a lot about replacement theory and all that sort of stuff, but she's Jewish.
oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, okay. Well, she's Jew. Oh, well then, from the perspective of the Torah, I would like to know where she would get some of her backing as far as like any spiritual or religious text that says that she will claim that she's living her life based off of. I would like to know. Just point here. Like, where'd you get that from?
Yeah.
I would very much like to see.
Let's just read a little bit from this article. Leading civil rights organizations, the Southern Poverty Law Center has added Libs of TikTok founder Haya Rychik to their hate watch list, describing her as an anti-LGBTQ plus extremist. The Libs of TikTok X account, which frequently posts anti-LGBTQ plus content, has been linked with bomb threats towards U.S. schools, according to an investigation by Vice, who uncovered that at least 11 schools or districts that had been featured on her Libs of TikTok had received bomb threats less than 1 week later, including the same one that she's now working on, the same school district in Oklahoma that she's working on. She had sent bomb threats there. And I'm thinking, so that's how you get a job these days? You send in bomb threats and be like, hire me? But also during that talk with Taylor Lorenz, it's like she also pulled up a picture of a blowjob on her phone to show Taylor, like, look, it's a picture of a blowjob.
On her phone.
Yeah.
Oh.
I think she was talking about one of the books, but she just happened to have that picture on the phone and she was showing it to Taylor, like, she didn't think Taylor knew what this was. That is the vibe that I got from her. Like, she was sharing this information on what this is.
It's like when Jordan Peterson came out one day on Twitter and said, look, here's proof that there are tweets containing porn. It's like, hey, dog, are you on Twitter looking for porn?
Mm-hmm.
If that's how, look, okay, if that's how they want to expose some seedy underground whatever, then okay, but it's not coming off great over here.
Mm-hmm. So the account has become infamous for pushing conspiracy theories and misinformation about the LGBTQ plus community, particularly LGBTQ plus minors. Its tweets have also been accused of sparking right-wing hate and harassment campaigns against teachers, media professionals, schools, and even White House staff. The Southern Poverty Law Center's listing for Rychik reads, or Haya, no. Rychik, Haya's her first name. Haya Rychik is the founder of the social media account Libs of TikTok, who helped revive the... Let's start the sentence over again. Haya Rychik is the founder of the social media account Libs of TikTok, who have helped revive in right-wing propaganda the anti-LGBTQ plus groomer slur, which implies that all LGBTQ plus people are pedophiles. She spreads the anti-LGBTQ plus conspiracy theory that groomers have infiltrated every social institution with the intent of sexualizing children. Her reign of terror must come to an end. Many people took to X to voice their support for the SPLC's decision to add her to their extremist watch list. LGBTQ plus legislative researcher and activist Ellison Chapman tweeted about the watch list and described Rychik's activity as a reign of terror. Her replies were immediately spammed with messages from Rychik supporters, with many celebrating the listing and even describing it as a badge of honor. And that goes to your point.
Yep, saw it coming.
Yeah. Like, I don't think this will hurt. Like, I don't think she understands it well enough to know what this means towards her. Like, she'll just wear it as a badge of honor. But this is the type of thing, when you start building all of this together, that can really start to make a case against Haya should the day come that somebody charges her with defamation?
I can say, because I started off with saying like I don't know very much about her, and I don't, but if there's three things I know about her, it's the interview with Tucker, the interview with Taylor, and the fact that she was spotted January 6th near the Capitol. None of these things are gonna, like, honestly, I want to be as optimistic and positive as possible, but with a platform like hers, none of these things are going to bring her down. Like, what's going to stop her? Like, she said something wrong or stupid. Okay, that's nothing to her. So, yeah, like I said in the opening, this is going to be a badge of honor for her. She's her standing on social media isn't built on something like intelligence or anything like that, or fact checking. So she'll be fine.
Well, I get the feeling something like this, in the long run, will come around to bite her again, because it is the whole leopards eating your face thing.
Oh yeah, she's gonna have to get sued into oblivion in order for something to impact her. But like,
Well, there's that,
which I mean,
there's also the fact
go
that
ahead.
she's Jewish and trying to spread the whole replacement theory thing, you know, which is anti-Semitic in its origin. And I get the feeling, you know, there's going to be a time when stuff about her becomes public that she would want to keep private, but just given the nature of who she is, she's not going to be able to keep a lid on it. And
You know,
that will happen.
Yeah, like dressing in drag at some point in her life,
A
or
video or text exchanges between somebody, like, there are skeletons in her closet, and her day will come, and people will not be kind, both on the left and on the right.
yeah. Well, yeah, that's kind of like you said, the leopards eating faces thing. It will be a thing. So, I mean, look, I'm sure there's a person or three who's waiting for my demise, whatever that might be. So, you know.
Well, hopefully that day will come in, what, 80 years? I don't math. Okay, so we'll go back to the main screen, and then we'll address the question from one of my viewers. So we'll be right back, and let's do this right.
Killing it.
Another smooth transition right there. I'm getting the hang of this. Okay, so as I was saying at the beginning of the show, I had a viewer asking me about if there's really a point in voting if you're in a very blue area. So, Jeff, to help you out, blue in Canada is conservative, red is liberal.
Oh, okay. That threw me off a little bit, but okay.
Yeah.
Continue.
As somebody who was working on Rebel HQ for quite some time, trying to keep those two straight and being dyslexic, not the easiest thing. So in Canada, we want the red wave, which just sounds very menstrual. So, but the liberals, so basically the liberals in Canada are kind of like your establishment Democrats, you know, very corporate neoliberal. The NDP is like the squad, where you have some that are actually really good and progressive, but others that have also kind of started to fall in line with the Democrats, the corporate Democrats. And then the conservatives are like the Republicans and are going pretty much, there are some branches that are just extreme as some of the Republicans. It's just we have better protections here in Canada, so it's going to be a lot more difficult for them to do what they're doing in the States. It's not impossible, but it's a hell of a lot more difficult. So the question from the viewers, somebody who lives in a very blue area, and we have the first past the post here, so it's just the person with the polarity that gets the seat and all of that sort of stuff. And if you know that you're going to be in a very blue area, then what's the point of even going out and voting? And so I let you know ahead of time that this was going to come up. Did you have any thoughts on if you should vote, even though you know your vote won't matter for who wins the seat?
Well, yeah, when you first presented this to me, the first thing I thought was, well, what if there's a lot of people like you who felt the exact same way? And what I'm about to say could lend itself to like communicating more and networking, sure. But if there's a number of people, dozens of people, maybe hundreds of people who feel the same way you do, and all of them feel the same way you do, which leads to inaction as far as voting, then yeah, the election is going to go the way you think, especially in that area. And so me, I'm in Ohio right now, and people may be under the impression that Ohio is purple when in reality it's red, Republican here. And we are just trying, literally right now, trying to get over a very much gerrymandered map, which lends itself to Republicans. At the same time, Republican legislature here in Ohio was trying to pass some laws regarding recreational marijuana and abortion rights, and they tried to do it in a very janky way. Had all of us assumed or thought that the elections were going to go a certain way because honestly, it's technically rigged, or they were trying to rig it one way or another, then things wouldn't have gone the way they did, which, by the way, both of those things went the way of leftist viewpoint when it comes to recreational marijuana and abortion access. So, yeah, if all of us thought that way, then the very thing that we would have been afraid of would have happened. So, I would encourage that individual to not think of it as an individual, but maybe as a group. Um, Sometimes you just never know. And so, um, again, that would lend itself to more communication and networking. So if that individual can find others like them, then do some damage, create a havoc, go out and do your civic duty because others will. Um, so that is my piece on this whole thing. I feel like um, I don't want this individual to give up, is I guess the point, even if it does not seem to be in their favor.
Okay. Sorry, I just caught a comment from Badash29. If we ever have a block government, I vote. We call it the blockage. So we have the Bloc Québécois. It's a federal party in Quebec that is, its origin was separatist, and it's not so much separatist now. It's a funny thought that that's what we could call it, but they can never have power because they can never win enough seats because they only exist within Quebec, and you need a certain amount of seats in order to win a majority in the government. And so they will never get to be the majority, although one time they were the opposition. So my answer to this, it's a bit longer and detailed and stuff, and I like to use Ontario as the example because here in Ontario, Doug Ford, despite all of the horrible stuff he's done, got reelected with only 18% of possible votes. So we had such a low voter turnout that when you did the math, so it was something under 50% of the people who voted, but when you did the math to all the people who could potentially vote, it was only 18% of possible voters. And he got in and has a majority with that. And part of it is the apathy that, as you were mentioning, if everyone kind of thinks that their vote doesn't matter and there's no point in going out, then we get a lot of people who don't do it. When if everyone actually went out and voted their convictions, things would look a lot different. If they actually thought their vote mattered, but it benefits the establishment to convince people it doesn't.
Yes.
Because it's not just the conservatives. The liberals also do this because it benefits the liberals too to, say your vote doesn't matter. And that helps actually keep the NDP in fewer ridings and stuff. And the liberals are always very quick to say, don't split your vote when it comes to certain ridings, because here, because we have the multi-party system. So if you have one conservative running and you have the Liberals and the NDP, and then the people on the left are splitting their votes between the Liberals and the NDP, then the conservative is going to win based on the polarity. So, but what the Liberals tend to not say is don't split the vote. So you better vote NDP in these certain ridings because the NDP has a better chance of winning. They'll never do it the other way. So this to me, there's a lot of different things. So you have areas where it could flip. So the margin between the left and the right is very narrow. So then, of course, it's very important to go out and vote because you want to hopefully flip that area into being Liberal or NDP. So in those instances, even if you're in a blue area, it's good to come out because, again, if everyone who actually came out and voted their convictions, then there's a high probability that, you know, people in this country are more left of center than they are center or right of center. And I think it's very much the same in the States when you think about it. You know, the policies that we want in place. I'm not necessarily talking about social issues, but when it comes to the policies put in place, both our countries are left of center when it comes to housing, affordability, social care, healthcare, things of that sort. For the ridings that are very heavy blue here, so the vast majority of them are blue, would it matter then if you go out and vote? Because then even if everyone in that riding who is Liberal and NDP all decided to get behind one of those candidates and votes, they still wouldn't beat the blue. Is there a point? And the answer is still yes.
Absolutely, yes.
And part of the reason is you can start to see trends because it's all documented, you know, how big the margins are. And so you can start to see if that margin starts to narrow, then that means that the party will notice eventually and actually maybe put more resources into it in that area to help increase the chances of making that margin narrow even more and get the momentum going. But it also lets other people in that riding know they're not alone. If you have more people come out and vote NDP per se, let's say, then you can see, well, okay, there are actually, you can get the numbers. You can actually say, okay, there are 5,000 other people in my riding that vote this way. Where are they and what can we do? And then you can start to, you know, get involved in the community, start networking with each other, start building momentum, you know, start joining campaigns and do the door knocking and things of that sort. Even like I have severe issues with the NDP in this area, just given my personal history with that party. But I'd still much rather see them in power than the Liberals or the Conservatives. So it's important just to let people know that they're not alone, but to also see where the trends go, because eventually the trends can change. Just because it's always been blue doesn't mean it's going to stay that way. And when other people start to see that margin narrow, then that actually helps to build the momentum and get more people involved and more people excited and more people in the game, the political game. So on all levels, if you know you're going to win, you vote because you want to make sure you win. If there's a chance of flipping, you want to vote because you want to help that chance to flip. If there's no chance of your party winning, you still want to vote because you want to let people know that there's other people in your community that vote the same way, and you want to see over time if that margin starts to narrow. And that only happens if people go out and vote.
It's not this simple, but if the amount of people who didn't vote represented like a presidential candidate here in America, that individual would win every presidential election every time.
Yeah.
So that's how strong it is, to where it's like apathy. And honestly, it might get worse this year. Hopefully not, but it might get worse. So
well,
yes,
it's the same here. Because, you know, less than half I think it was actually shockingly low. Like only 30% of possible voters went out and voted in Ontario this past election. Like just less than half the population went out. And it's getting really bad with the apathy. But if everyone actually went out and voted their convictions, we'd have, a parliament that looks a lot different than what it is. But we run into the problem here in Canada where there's not that much difference between the Liberals and the Conservatives. It's just the Conservatives, generally speaking, are just worse. They're worse on everything. And they are moving further right in their rhetoric and what they want to do, because now we have Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the federal Conservatives, who wants to start implementing his anti-trans agenda. But like Justin Trudeau with his renters' bills of rights on the federal level, you can't necessarily do that. You can't necessarily get away with it. But the rhetoric matters because it stokes up the base and, will increase the hatred towards LGBTQ plus folks. But his ability to actually make that legislation happen is it's not good, just given the powers between the federal and the provincial governments. And we'll get into that with the renters' bills of rights. So that was basically, I think that's everything that I wanted to say about that. Because I always say it's important to vote, but then I tend to forget to actually maybe break it down a little bit more as to why.
That's the thing, but my heart goes out to that person. If they feel hopeless or helpless in this situation, that sucks. That speaks to either a city or a municipality not representing them and feel like their voice can be heard. That is not a good feeling.
Oh, I feel it too. Like I am so frustrated with the party system here. Like I am so frustrated with how our government works. Like I feel it too. The thing is that the elections, they're just a tool. They're not the end all be all. It's the activism that ends up pushing the parties in the directions we want. Like it's people hitting the streets. It's people, very little actually gets done through the government. And I can feel it too, because it's especially somebody who lives with disability and lives with poverty. The outlook is not good right now for what's happening in our government. But it is just... It is just a stop. Like it's just one thing in the toolbox. There's a phrase in my head that I knew earlier when I was talking about this, but
no, I was gonna say, like, I know with you specifically, there is a great deal of policies that could be implemented where you are that would impact you personally. And so I would imagine every vote matters to you as well.
What it comes down to is in Ontario, we got Doug Ford in power again. And I'm not exaggerating when I say there are going to be people who will not make it to the next election because of that decision. Because of that. Through the legislative poverty that people are in when they're living with disabilities, to the lack of health care that we're getting. We have ERs being shut down. We have funding cuts happening constantly. Our healthcare system is just absolutely falling apart, and people are losing their lives because of it. And so there are absolutely people who would be alive had any other government got into power. And so that's part of the reason why I feel so passionately about it. But, it's harm reduction. That's the word that I was looking for. The votes, the government that we get in, it's harm reduction. So you vote for the least worst option. And it's the work done on the ground the rest of the time that really gets it going. Also, very important that people don't tend to think of is to make sure you get involved on the municipal level, because municipal politics has a huge impact on people's daily lives, more so than they tend to think.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm glad this individual reached out to you and they can trust you to answer as best as possible, because you are definitely passionate about it.
Yeah, it is something that I completely feel. And there are times when even I kind of just want to say, fuck it, there's no point. But you got to stay at it. You got to keep in the fight. You got to keep going. It's the harm reduction. It's reaching out to other people in your community with like minds and stuff. It's trying to just get the progressive message out there, the word out there. And it is so frustrating at times because it's never the whole 2 step forward, 1 step back that people like to think. It's more like we do 5 steps forwards and it's 4 steps back, and it usually happens in chunks. Yeah. So it can be so frustrating, but in the long term, it will, you know, we generally speaking as societies, we are starting to move more progressive than we were years and years ago in both the United States and in Canada. And it's just important that we keep on fighting, because the instant we don't is the instant we go to hands made tail, because there are people on the right that will just take it away as fast as they possibly can if they're given the opportunity. So we got to make sure they don't get that opportunity.
Yeah, we got the same thing going on. Some places are better than others, but there's a lot on the line this year when it comes to local, state, and federal government elections. So again, whoever that person was, take advantage of the civic duty that you have and that was given to you.
Yep. Okay, so with that, why don't I check the Sandbox really quick, and then we can get on to the Renters' Bills of Rights that the Justin Trudeau has decided would be a good thing. See, I call my chat the Sandbox because my name is Sandy, and this is Left of the Box.
I don't have anything that cool for mine, but I'm gonna try to think of something later.
Let's see. Oh, it looks like there's a birthday. I don't see the original message from where that's at. So happy birthday to whoever's birthday it is.
Happy birthday.
Oh, Bob says he'll be 49 on Tuesday. Well, happy birthday.
Congrats, Bob.
See, this is the tricky part where I'm trying to find comments that I kind of know the context that aren't part of a conversation that's happening within the chat. Bad Lefty says, I've known people brought up extremely religious, but they don't strike me as hateful, even if a little judgmental. It's all sorts. Like, that's the thing. You can never... Childhood has a huge influence on how you turn out, but it's never the determining factor. Like, you still have the ability to make your own, define yourself as who you want to be, to change your mind, to reach out, to get educated, to, it can have a heavy influence, but it's not what defines you.
At which age can you stop using the "that's how I was raised" thing?
I was raised conservative. I was raised in a very conservative household. And I've gotten more progressive the older I've gotten because, I've started to learn. Get out there and start to actually understand the values that mean something to me. Oh, and just a reminder, people, I have my Amazon wish list linked in the description box below with tons of Easter stuff on it. So you can celebrate Easter and Trans Visibility Day all in one action by buying me chocolate from it.
Get in that wish list, people.
Nope. Oh my god, the Peanut Butter Solution. I love that cursed movie. I know what you're talking about. Have you heard of that movie?
I have not.
Okay, I'll give you a synopsis, and I'm not joking when I say what I'm about to say. So it's about a bunch of teenagers, and one of them gets spooked and loses his hair. So they find this potion that involves peanut butter that will help him grow his hair back. And so he makes this potion and he puts it on his head. And then his friend, the other boy teenager, thought it'd be funny to see what would happen if he put it on his junk. And he got really long hair on his junk. And so his hair starts to grow uncontrollably long. But then he gets kidnapped by some bad guy in the city who then uses clips of his hair to make magical paintbrushes, and he starts kidnapping the other children in the city to work in this factory to make these magical paintbrushes?
Sandy, I said I was going to be on till 9:30. If you wanted me to leave 5 minutes early, you could have just said that instead of giving me a synopsis of this weird movie. But all right, yeah, that's a real thing.
Yeah, no, that movie was a real thing.
Okay.
But
All right.
the boy who put it on his junk was able to just use his mental ability of telling the hair to stop growing and make it stop growing after it was literally coming out the bottom of his pant leg.
Okay. Well,
I just, yeah. How do movies like that get made again is what I wanted.
I have so many questions that I don't want the answers to. That's amazing.
Like, that's what there's a lot more that went on in it. That's the crux of what I remember of it, but it's been like a long, long time since I've seen it. But it's like, considering how long ago I saw it and I remember it to this day, like, that tells you how intense that movie was. Because it was made for children.
Oh gosh, you keep making it worse. You keep making it worse. The more you say about it, the worse it gets. And I'm pretty sure you're probably giving it an accurate synopsis, but wow.
If you look back to the 80s and the stuff that they made for kids back then, wow. The Last Unicorn used to be my favorite movie when I was a kid because I love unicorns, hence the couple unicorns that I have here. And I saw it again because it was like the 25th anniversary edition of it, and I bought it. And watching that movie again as an adult was like a constant state of deja vu, because the instant something happened in that movie, it's like, oh, right, that happened. But the next moment, I couldn't think of what it was. Like, it was a complete blank. But again, the instant it happened, it's like, how would I ever forget that? Holy crap, that movie is dark. So dark.
I don't even know what that one is either, but all right, yeah.
No, there's the last unicorn who goes on a quest to try to find where all the other unicorns went to, and this takes place in like the medieval times, and she comes across a witch who tries to imprison the unicorn, but the witch actually has to cast a spell on the unicorn so other people can see the horn, because only true believers can see the horn, type thing. And so then the unicorn's part of a carnival show, but then the wizard apprentice to this witch knows that it's a real unicorn and helps the unicorn to escape, and a vulture escape, this vulture harpy thing that actually eats the witch. And so then he helps this unicorn go on this quest to try to find the rest of the unicorns that are being held captive by an evil king in the water, being patrolled by a fiery red bull. And the fiery red bull finds this unicorn and tries to go after her. So the wizard makes her a human. And so this unicorn is trying to, understand now suddenly that she's human, try to figure out what that means, and is feeling things like regret and like all these other emotions that unicorns just never had. And so her and a couple other people from a wandering band of misfits or whatever go to this castle to try to free the rest of the unicorns, and the prince of the evil king falls in love with the human version of the unicorn, but she just doesn't have it with him because she's a unicorn and doesn't understand what this love is, and he's trying so desperately hard to get her to love him. But eventually the king kind of figures out, and they have to go down, they defeat the bull, and all the unicorns get released, and then finally the spell is broken on her and she's back to being a unicorn, but she can never go back to being with her kind again because the impact of being human on her has changed her so profoundly that she will always forever be an outcast, even though the rest of the unicorns are now released.
You could have very well been making all that up as you went along, and I would not know. Like, you could have just came up with that off the top of your head. You could have been freestyling this thing, and I would have no idea. You
Oh,
could be fooling me. I
and
have my computer right here and I was about to look it up, but I'm like, you know what? Sandy's doing such a good job that I
mhm.
am just going to listen.
Yeah, and there were musical, like they didn't sing in it, but there was a musical track to it, like background music or whatever, by a very, it was a famous 80s rock band at the time, I think. Like you would probably recognize the name if you look it up as to who was the main artist to that rock band that provided the music to it. Um, but I used to see it when it would come on TV and stuff, and I absolutely loved it as a kid. But looking at it now, just like, wow, is this movie dark? Like, just wow.
Well, that is all the time that I have.
We'll get to the Renter's Bill of Rights. Something that is a little bit more relevant. Anyway, now that I've like totally got off track with like these really old movies that I vaguely remember as a child.
No, but thank you so much. I got to prepare my kids for their first first day back in school tomorrow. We just came off a spring break. Sandy, it's always nice to see you. Thank you for having me on and inviting me. I very much appreciate it. But by the way, you're killing it with the amount of content you're putting up.
Oh, thank you.
I feel like I see something like either every day or multiple times a
They're
day.
clips
So
from my live streams that I'm trying to get up
of course,
daily, so.
no, of course, but at least you're giving yourself an opportunity to record for longer and then split up some of the clips. And so that's a really cool idea. So it gets you out there more often, which is dope.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you again so much for coming on.
Good night, everybody in the Sandbox. I will see you soon.
Well, hello, it's just me now. That was really great having Jeff on, and unfortunately we couldn't get his take on the Renter's Bill of Rights because we just started talking about really movies. um, those should be on people's watch lists now, I would think. The Last Unicorn and the Peanut Butter Solution, that's a movie night extravaganza thing right there. But we will still be talking about the Renter's Bills of Rights because it's a very interesting story. So first, let's again go back to the Sandbox and hope we don't get too sidetracked. Oh. Let's see. Soul Life, that movie burns itself into your memory. I don't know which one you're talking about, but both. Both, I think, do it. Genie Bottle, Last Unicorn is a great animated film with good music, but ending is sad. Yeah, that's the whole realization that she can't go back, and there's a certain emotion that she now feels that she's never felt before. I forget what it is, but it's a very apathy type motion, I think it is. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but whew, yeah. Used to love that movie when I was a kid. Watch it whenever it would come on TV. Bad Ash 27, that sounds like a straight up acid trip of a movie. I'm pretty sure all the screenwriters back in the 80s were high. Because that's when you had, like, I think the heavy metal cartoon came out too, even though that one's definitely geared for adults. But a lot of movies back in the 80s, just if you go back to them and start rewatching them, like, you know, you have movies in the 60s that had their vibe, movie in the 70s that had their vibe, and then movies in their 80s also very much have their vibe. I suppose every decade does, because even 90s movies have their vibe, so. I don't think there's a vibe to the movies in the aughts, though. But yes, I do love unicorns. Have since I was a child. That is not a trend for me. I have little unicorn figurines from when I was like 5 years old. I have some still. Nope, I think Sandy left out that the ghost gave the boy peanut butter solution, but I see how it would be blocked by one's memory. I did not remember ghosts in it. It's been such a long time. But now I'm kind of like, I need to see it again, but I don't want to watch it alone. I need to have other people with me if I watch that movie again. uh... Okay. Yes, there's been lots of live streaming happening today. Ole had something on. Dan from the web had a special power report on. The Surfs just had their fundraiser on. I hope they've reached their goal by now. Bad Ash, early 2000s was just a copy paste of the 90s, yeah. Yeah, it's like the big thing that happened in the 90s, I think, was just the technology for movies, especially in the late 90s, you know, when you got things like The Matrix coming out and whatnot, and the special effects were a game changer when it came to movies, I think. For good and bad, because you have some old-fashioned special effects that still work, sometimes even better than digital, but digital did open up the door to whole new worlds that weren't there before. Okay, so why don't we get on to the Renters' Bills of Rights that Justin Trudeau was talking about, and we can do that. So you'll have to bear with me as we do the awkward transitions with this. So I'll be right back. And I am back. Okay, I'm figuring this out. This will be a little bit more easier because I don't have to pay attention to double clicking it, and I can just click the tabs now that I have this set up looking about right. Okay, so recently, like March 27th recently, Justin Trudeau has come out with a announced upcoming budget measures, and in particular, he was talking about a Renters' Bills of Rights, and I think it starts around here. We'll have to skip around in it to find the right spot. So I have a few articles to go over about it, and yeah, we'll see if there's anything that needs to be read between the lines with this.
Rendre leur option limitée. Après leurs études, ils font face à des pressions que leurs parents n'avaient. Issues people are facing is being with the plan. Now the foundation, et nous, on a des solutions à ces défis. Now the foundation of a good life is stability. That starts with a place to call home.
Oh, and let me know how the audio is for you guys, if it's too loud or too quiet.
We know that one of the biggest issues people are facing is being able to afford a place to live, whether you're making mortgage payments or rent. This morning, I want to talk about renters. In today's Canada, more people are renting than ever before. And that number is growing at double the rate of those able to buy a new home compared to a decade ago. Nearly two.
Maybe you should get into why that is, Justin. Why are there more people renting? You might want to mention that. Just saying.
Thirds of young Canadians rent their homes, and they spend a greater share of their income on housing than other generations. And in cities like Vancouver, where we are today, this is even more true. This is the most expensive city to rent in the country. Renters matter. And young Canadians put a lot of their hard-earned money towards rent. We think that should count for a lot more. So today we're announcing new protections for renters and new pathways to home ownership. As part of our upcoming budget, we're going to create a Canadian Renters' Bill of Rights. It would create a nationwide standard for lease agreements, give renters a clear history of apartment pricing so they can bargain fairly, and make sure they have more agency.
I'm sorry, but he is so out of touch to think that just because we know what the last tenants paid in a building that the landlord is going to be more accommodating to a new tenant. You know, if there's no it's getting late. What's the term? Rent, when you fix the rents. There's no rent control. Do you really think that landlord will then negotiate with people? Be like, well, the last tenant was paying this, so, you know, instead of increasing the rent by $500 when you move in, I'm going to increase it only by $400. Like, he doesn't get that renters don't have the option to bargain or negotiate. That's not what the renters do. There's so few affordable rental units available that the landlords often do things like, people will throw in added things like, oh, I'll give you this much money up front, or I'll pay you this much more in order to get this. Like, there's actual competition for affordable units that the landlords can do whatever the hell they want. There's no negotiating. None of that. The landlords are the ones in complete control of the situation, and they get to determine who gets in and who doesn't and what the terms are.
We're also going to launch a new legal aid fund that will protect tenants against unfairly rising rents, rent evictions, and bad landlords. And finally, we're going to help you make your rent count towards you becoming a homeowner. We'll do that by making sure that the fact that you pay your rent every month, which, remember, is a pretty significant amount of money.
Why is that?
That payment and that demonstrated reliability that you've shown over months and years is taken into account when you apply for a mortgage. We're going to amend the Canadian Mortgage Charter and call on landlords, banks, credit bureaus, and others to make sure that your rental history is taken into account in your credit score.
I don't know if that is the good thing he seems to think it is. It's not credit scores that are keeping people from buying homes, for one thing. Also, notice some of the language that he's used so far. He says that he wants to stop rent increases that aren't fair. What determines what is fair? You know, is it the renters or the landlords? Like, who gets to determine what is fair? And here he just said, we're going to call on banks to do this. We're going to ask them, basically. There's nothing he can do to force them to do this. He's going to call on them to do this. And the idea of rent payments going towards your credit score, you know who that harms? That harms the people who are living with poverty, people who are living with disabilities, people who hit a rough time and get behind on the rent. You know, that difference in credit score isn't going to help somebody buy a house, but it will harm people in their credit from doing anything else that requires it if they're just if they fall into that unfortunate trap of not being able to pay their rent for so many reasons. We'll get more into that.
This will make it easier to qualify for a mortgage or even qualify you at a lower rate. And just think about all the other things that'll come from having a better credit score. A loan to help you start a small business, for example. On va rendre l'économie plus équitable pour les locataires avec la nouvelle.
Yeah, because that's what we all want to do. We all want that loan to start a small business. You know, that's what we need the money for, you know, instead of like groceries. If only, if only. So we'll get into this. So this was another statement that he released on the Twitter.
If you're renting right now, you're going to want to hear this. Our upcoming budget is going to make renting fairer. That means making sure you can see what previous tenants of your apartment paid so you can negotiate a fair deal. It means making sure that your rent payments are counted by the bank towards your credit score. It doesn't make any sense for someone who pays $2,000 a month in mortgage payments to get credit for it, but not someone who's paying $2,000 in rent.
Okay, Justin, did you just hear what you said? $2,000 for rent. That's the problem. That's the problem right there. Not that it's not going towards the credit score, but the fact that it's $2,000 for rent in this country. That's the problem.
And we're bringing in new rights and protections for renters so that you don't have to stand up to rent evictions, bad landlords, or rent hikes alone. It's all part of making renting fairer, and it's part of giving you a leg up for when it comes time to buy your own home. This is what our
How many people in the younger generations realistically think that's ever going to be an option for them at this point? Buying their own home. No. Like it's there are more people renting, as he said. That number is drastically increasing because home ownership is just not an option anymore for so many people. You know, even couples with high incomes. Owning homes are just so unattainable unless you're a multi-millionaire. It is just, he is doing this. This is the performative bullshit that I'm so upset about, that I was talking about earlier. There's no teeth to this. There's nothing he can do to actually change this. This is just him saying this to try to make himself look good. This doesn't actually change anything. It doesn't actually help anyone.
upcoming budget is going to do to focus on making the housing market fairer for every generation. If you're renting right now, you're...
And as the person who quote tweeted this says, I went up to a Toronto landlord and said, I'm here to negotiate a fair deal for this apartment. So if I went up to a landlord and said, let me start this over again. If I went up to a Toronto landlord and said, I'm here to negotiate a fair deal for this apartment, he would laugh, throw me off the roof and tell the next tenant my broken body was a lawn ornament and charge them an extra $1,000 a month for the privilege of looking at it. Yeah. I feel that one. That's kind of... Oh, I can make that bigger. There we go. That is accurate. No tenant gets to negotiate, you know, what we get. There's no negotiations that happen. That's not how it works. And Justin Trudeau is too fucking out of touch to understand that's the reality for people who are renting. So Claire Blackwood just also adds, to be clear, rent housing affordability is a failure on many levels of government and so many governments. It's not just this announcement, but the messaging here is so removed from the reality of renters' experiences right now that it threatens to help the opposition. It's frustrating. Yes. The housing crisis is not something that can be fixed by one thing. It's going to take all levels of government working together, implementing a vast array of legislation, of cracking down on corporations, on landlords, on greed, in order for anything to change. But then you have the problem of the conservatives always wanting to fight back, especially when it's provincial conservatives and federal liberals. They don't want the liberals to have any win, so it's constantly fighting to not let anything get passed. And considering how many people in the government, how many MPs and MPPs are landlords, the likelihood that they're actually going to pass legislation that helps renters, like, it's absurd to think that they would, that this is a reality. Like, it's ridiculous to think that they would pass legislation that would harm their profits, their income, their margins on their properties. Especially since the opposition is led by a little weasel who absolutely does not know or care what it's like to rent now, and will stomp on the lower renting classes the second he's able to grasp power in his slimy little paws. I want to be excited about stuff that helps renters. I'm sick of seeing my friends get fucked over by bad landlords and the market. I'm happy they're acknowledging that it's difficult, but there's so much ignored here in a time of rampant government information and that's worrying. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about that. Misinformation, misleading information, definitely. So this is from CTV News. Here's what Trudeau says the upcoming federal budget will offer renters. We're not actually watching that. The federal government will create a Canadian Renters Bill of Rights, which would require landlords to disclose their property's rental price history to prospective tenants. Again, that doesn't change anything other than letting us know what we already know, and that rents have been increasing at an exponential high rate. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau made the announcement Wednesday in Vancouver, saying it's one of 3 new measures that will be part of upcoming federal budget, which will also include a new housing aid fund and push to have rental payments affect credit scores. Whenever they talk about new housing, it's always, what part of it is affordable? And like, screw that. It needs to be social housing. We need socialized housing. We need, somebody mentioned, I just glanced over in the Sandbox that, the government needs to buy out these landlords, force them out. And then, yeah, they need to do that and then socialize the rents. Make it affordable, like really affordable. Get rid of these corporations that are just bleeding us dry. But they're not going to do that when we have so many fucking landlords that work within the government. Rental demand outpaced supply in most major markets across the country last year, according to the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corp. Review published in January. The average purpose-built 2-bedroom apartment went for $1,359 per month, while condo rental costs at $2,049. Okay, that is woefully under the market rate for a 2-bedroom right now. I don't know where they're getting the average purpose-built from, because that is extremely under, like, by about $1,000. Canada's overall vacancy rate fell to a new low of 1.5% last year because there's no new units being made or being made available. Let's just say there's enough rental units out there right now to house all unhoused people 6 times over. Like, enough empty properties. It's just if they're actually being used for rental properties, or are they being used for B&Bs? Are they just being left empty because it's an investment property and it's not actually something they care to rent out? Like, there's so much more. Like, we can get rid of all short-term rental things like Airbnbs. Just get rid of them. And we can, buy out empty properties to actually make them into rental properties. Like, you can convert old buildings into new, like, change the zoning, all that sort of stuff. We'll touch on zoning, actually, when it comes to fourplexes and Doug Ford and his whole NIMBY attitude in just a moment right after this. Tenants' rights advocates have long championed the concept of a rental registry, which would allow renters to see what the previous tenant paid for a unit before accepting a new rate. The incoming Bill of Rights aims to empower renters to bargain fairly, a Wednesday press release said. Alongside it, Trudeau promised $15 million fund for provincial legal aid services to protect tenants against unfairly raising rent payments, rent evictions, or bad landlords. Again, you have that unfairly. What defines what is fair? Who gets to define what is fair? It's not the tenants. We don't get that. Again, it's all in the language, because whenever you hear, oh, this is an affordable home, what they mean, the technical definition of that is 80% of market rate. That doesn't make it affordable in the vast majority of cases. And so here it's like unfairly, but who gets to determine that? In today's Canada, more people are renting than ever before. Nearly 2/3 of young Canadians rent their homes, he said, adding that younger people spend larger portions of their incomes on rent than other generations have. And that's the problem. That's the problem. Larger portions of their incomes being spent on rent. There's the problem right there. You know, having this Bill of Rights, you need to change that. You know, having rent payments go towards credit scores doesn't change this. Maybe young people want to start a family, but they don't know how they can afford something bigger than a one-bedroom apartment. The new rules would require significant buy-in from provinces, which could be a battle, Cedric Dussault, a tenants advocate with Quebec-based organization, says. And there again is you read between the lines and how effective this is. The whole promising promises that the Liberals does. They need buy-in. They can't just do this. The provinces have to agree to it. They have to work with the provinces. The provinces that are conservatively run will not do it, even if this is something that would greatly benefit the people of the provinces. The Conservatives won't let it go because they don't want the Liberals to have a win, which is why very little in this country ever gets done. So it's nice that he's announcing this Bill of Rights, but in practicality, how this is going to play out, what actually happens, nothing. This is the performative bullshit that Justin Trudeau does. This makes him look good to announce this, but nobody will follow up with him to see if any of this is enacted. And very little of this will be, because you need the buy-in from the provinces, which he's not going to get. So the Cedric says, to be frank, we're not sure this is really up to the federal government to enact, he told CTV News in a phone interview shortly after Trudeau's announcement, which he called surprising. Cedric also threw cold water on the aid fund for provincial organizations. It's better than nothing, he said. It seems like a lot of money, but when we look at the whole country, at all the needs of all the tenants across the country, it will be used up quickly. Housing disputes can take years to make their way through courts, Cedric explained, while staff salaries and legal consultation fees could also go up. We're facing an explosion of demands from tenants, he said. Building credit scores. The government will also amend the Canadian Mortgage Charter and call on banks and credit companies to incorporate rental payments into Canadians' credit history, the press release said. So again, call on banks. Can't force the banks to do it. He's just suggesting that they do it. Think like a mask mandate. It's like we call on companies to have a mask mandate, to have people vaccinated, but, you know, we can't force anyone. And it's the same thing that's happening here. They can't force the banks to do this. And when Justin Trudeau talks about it, he only talks about the positive aspect of it. You know, the people who pay their rent regularly and how that would benefit their credit score. And he doesn't say how detrimental this will be to the people who are struggling. He leaves that part out. But also, the banks have to agree to this. The credit companies have to agree to this. So he says this will make it easier for you to qualify for a mortgage or even qualify for a lower rate. Lamenting that property owner can build, well, we kind of covered that. You're spending $2,000 a month on rent. That gives you no kudos. It gives you no credit, he said. There's the problem. There's the problem right there. It's the $2,000 a month. And Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland announced earlier this month that the 2024 budget will be presented on Tuesday, April 16th. Noting that Canadians continue to feel the squeeze of inflation while increasingly becoming preoccupied with the looming mortgage renewals, Freeland signaled that the budget would focus on housing affordability and jobs while balancing the need to remain fiscally prudent by limiting major new spending plans. Oh, great. Yeah, let's start doing the whole neoliberal thing and cutting out all the programs that people rely on. Oh, so frustrating. So frustrating. This won't help people. This is just a performative bullshit measure from Justin Trudeau. So for the people who are confused as to what this means, it means nothing. Because he's announcing it, but there's no guarantee. In fact, there's very little guarantee that any of this will be enacted. It's just wishful thinking. And he could put it in the budget so well, but, still needs the buy-in from the provinces, calling on banks to do it. And depending on how long that process takes, but come the next federal election, he's not going to be in power. And the Conservatives will completely scrap all of it. You need municipal, provincial, and federal to actually work together for a change, to lower the crisis of housing, to get that under control, to lower the affordability crisis. You actually need all levels of government doing their job and working together for the benefit of the people of this country, as opposed to the corporations and wealthy few. And the wealthy few who tend to be part of that government. Because you get things like this still.
As tenants across this country.
This Bill of Rights won't stop this.
We struggle to afford skyrocketing rent and face eviction. Some are refusing to pay and stay for free. It's creating a bitter battle with landlords, now compounded by renters using delays in the court system as leverage. CTV's Caitlin Wilson explains.
It's costing us is our sanity, our health, and our ability to function on a day-to-day basis.
Varun Sriskanda is a property manager in Ottawa. He sees firsthand the toll it takes on landlords when tenants don't pay their rent.
We are seeing homeowners and landlords lose their properties. We're seeing them go into significant debt just to hold on to the houses.
That's
This is them just, the fringe cases, the small landlords and stuff of that sort. We need to focus on them and blah, blah, blah. This isn't the big issue. The big issue is affordability and the landlords that abuse tenants. This isn't what the news should be focusing on, but rarely ever does the news focus on the real problem that's affecting the most amount of people. And even of the small landlords, they make the choice to go into that. They make the choice to buy the extra properties to do that. The only landlords I have any sort of sympathy for are the ones that, have an extra room in their house or have converted their basement because they need it in order to be able to afford keeping the house. Like, they don't have much choice. They're not doing it for an extra income. They're doing it to survive themselves. That's not the vast majority of landlords. Even small landlords, that's not the vast majority. That's just a tiny, tiny portion of them. But leave it to the news to, focus on the poor landlords that, did a gamble with these rental units and they're going to lose their money. oh no, it's not like they can't then just sell the properties for a profit and move on or anything like that.
Because landlords are waiting months or longer for a hearing at the Landlord and Tenant Board as their bills pile up.
We waste about 1 year going to a hearing that we know from the very start it will go in the landlord's favor.
Between 2022
landlord's favor.
Between 2020
that we know from the very start it will go in the landlord's favor.
Why do you know from the start that it's going to go in the landlord's favor? Huh. That's interesting. Why? You just assume it's going to go in the landlord's favor?
Between 2022 and 2023, the board received more than 37,000 applications to evict tenants who failed to pay rent. But that year, only 7% were heard within its target of 50 to 55 calendar days.
It's the small guys that are getting obliterated. They're the ones that are going bankrupt, not the big operators. So the issues at the LTB have a dramatic impact.
This Toronto landlord,
they made the choice to get into this business. They took that chance. That's part of having a small business, if you want to call this a small business, is you have to take those chances. That responsibility falls on you. You're not always going to make it as whatever business you do. You made the choice. And if you happen to get a bunch of tenants that don't pay because the economy is absolute shit right now, well, then that's on you. And maybe you should have thought of that before you bought those rental properties to rent out.
Estimates he loses $15,000 to $30,000 each year in unpaid rent. And he recently started this petition calling on the Ontario government to implement automatic evictions.
I don't believe that there's any adjudication process.
Just automatic eviction? Like, that's of course what the landlord wants. They don't want to have to go through the board because that just takes too much time. And besides, at the end, they're going to agree with the landlord anyway. They just want to be able to kick them out as soon as possible. Just automatic eviction.
Just required. It should simply be, here's an order. You need to move out.
He believes the change would help alleviate the backlog.
Yeah, let's just get rid of tenants' rights altogether. That's what the landlord is saying. We just need to get rid of their rights altogether to make our lives easier.
Create more rental units and incentivize more landlords to enter the market. But tenant advocates don't agree, saying it's simply part of the risk that comes with renting out a property. They say speeding up the process could mean fewer rights for tenants. CTV News reached out to the Ministry of Housing and the Landlord and Tenant Board for comment, but did not hear back in time for deadline.
Caitlin Wilson, CTV News, Ottawa.
And then we get horrible stories like this, too. Tenants do not have rights.
A Mississauga retirement home is permanently shutting down to make room for a private housing development, leaving about 200 seniors scrambling to find a new place to live. But they're not just losing their affordable housing. When a retirement home closes, they also lose their care.
Joyce Dodge has lived in her one-bedroom apartment at Chartwell Heritage Glen for 20 years. Joyce, who will celebrate her 92nd birthday next week, has regular access to a doctor and pharmacy on site, but doesn't require assisted living.
I do my own cooking and baking. I do my own housework, own laundry. I do my own everything. But I'm very happy here.
Last Tuesday, my mom called and said 2 women were at the door and gave her a notice of eviction. And I thought, well, that can't be right.
Joyce received this notice to end her tenancy, telling her the property is being sold to a private developer and she would have to move out by the end of July.
We were all shocked. Everybody you look at, you could see they're worried.
The developer has plans to renovate the residence and redevelop it into traditional rental units for all ages. Chartwell told City News in a statement, the aging infrastructure of the buildings has made it unsustainable to continue operations as a retirement residence. It added, a team of consultants is providing personalized support.
So now that I'm done playing almost with my little thing over here, just a reminder, Chartwell is the group that, whoops, go away. Chartwell is the group that owned a lot of the long-term care homes where a lot of the seniors died in their beds from dehydration during COVID. Yeah, that's Chartwell, where you have Mike Harris, who's one of the shareholders of that corporation. This company is just monsters. Chartwell is a monster. They don't care about the tenants. Like, that's the thing. Like, you find a place that's actually good for you, that benefits you, and then without any say, without any control, it can be taken away from you, and there's nothing you can do, and there's nowhere else reasonable for you to go, because you can't get that same type of care anywhere else.
To help residents find new housing options while covering all costs related to relocation, along with moving expenses.
We want a lateral move. If you're moving her, it's the same size and the same price.
For Joyce's daughter, Karen Santaguida, who lives nearby, location is one concern. Another is skyrocketing rent. Joyce currently pays around $1,600 per month for her unit.
Did I tell you they sent an apartment yesterday to look at?
But Karen's biggest worry is finding a room in a seniors building with the same supports and that will allow her mom to continue living independently. So far, she's been sent nothing of the sort.
There's over 200 people in here who are in the same boat. Some may be ready for long-term care, but a lot aren't. Where are they going to go?
You can see the toll that this has taken on you.
Yeah, it's hard. But we keep it positive, and for some reason things work out in the end, so I'm hoping the same thing.
Retirement homes are only required by law to give 3 months notice before they close, but families here say they could use more time, and they've described the measures that Chartwell has put in place to help them with the transition process as the bare minimum. For City News, I'm Karen Seolin.
Sorry, I was trying to adjust that as I was doing that, but like, how can you, what do you do when you have a loved one that you can't look after and you rely on one of these homes? Like, I just even think of myself when I get to that age. You know, you have that little level of independence where you have your own place and stuff, but you just need that little extra care. And then suddenly you're looking at the options of going into a place where you get no care or you get no independence. It's just, that's not a great option. And then we have this. Did I want to get into this one? This is a little bit more off topic of actual homes and stuff. Well, we'll quickly go through it. I guess there's still one more thing that I want to hit on before we wrap up the stream, but we'll do this as well. Some homeless people don't want to leave the street, Higgs said. And this is from CBC News, and that is bullshit. Premier says St. John's death shows need for law to let authorities force people into addiction treatment. So here we have another conservative leader of a province being so fucking out of touch with people It's not that people don't want to leave the streets. It's just that's the best of the worst options. They're doing what is in their best interest because the options that are given to them are far worse than this. It's the least of the worst options. Premier Blaine Higgs says the death of 2 people at a tent encampment in St. John's showed the need for legislation that would force some homeless people with addictions into treatment against their will. Because that always works. That's what you do. You force people into treatment and they get better. As opposed to dealing with all the environmental reasons that caused them to turn to substance in the first place. Maybe that would help. Because if you force somebody into a treatment center, and even if it were to be successful and they break the addiction, what then? You're just going to send them back into the same environment that caused the addiction in the first place? Higgs brought up the bill yet to be introduced in response to questions from the opposition about the 2 deaths on Monday. Some people just don't want to come off the street, the premier said in question period. Oh my God. What an asshole. What a presumptuous asshole to say that. It's not a choice. People are there because they have no better choice. He continues, so we are going to consider that as an acceptable lifestyle and condone it, or are we going to find a way to help them find a way back into homes and into lives that's worth living? He doesn't get to determine and tell people what kind of life is worth living. Thank you very much. Last fall's throne speech promised legislation called the Compassionate Intervention Act. The Conservatives are always very good at having names for acts that are actually the exact opposite of what they're trying to do. Kind of like the Family Benefit Act, which would destroy families, or the Inclusion Act, which is exclusionary, and all that sort of bullshit. Just, this isn't compassionate what he's saying it is. Which are the government, he said, would empower judges and hearing officers to order treatment service for substance abuse disorder. It says that intervention would include a compassionate approach. And the legislation would set out parameters for that. The compassionate approach would be, again, to remove all the things in the environment that cause the person to turn to substances in the first place. Higgs said during question period that the bill would recognize that when people's lives are in danger, we can help them find shelter so they will not die. The premier said he hoped the legislation would win unanimous support in the legislature. We get it. They hate poor people. That's what it is. They just hate poor people. And to actually work with everything that, because you have to look at it in so many ways. It's not just the addictions. Okay, so they get rid of the addictions. What kind of job skills do they have? If they get the job, will that job actually afford them a place to live? Like if they were to work full time at minimum wage, is there anywhere that they can still then afford to live? Do they have the skills to maintain a property, to do the cooking and cleaning? Or will that also need to be included? Do they have all the future medical assistance they need, the follow-up checkups, the medication, which isn't covered under our universal health care? How about all of that? Is that included? To deal with the trauma that maybe led to the addictions, is that included? The mental health treatment, is that included? Or is it they just force them off of whatever substance they're on and then brush their hands of it once they've been sober for a week and then throw them back in the same environment that caused it in the first place? It's horrible bullshit from these people. And then, something that would help the housing crisis would be fourplexes, zoning changes to allow fourplexes. But you have NIMBYs like Doug Ford that are just like, no, that's a horrible idea.
Premier Doug Ford under fire, but not budging on his comments on fourplexes today, even going as far as to say they would destroy communities made up of single-family homes, and taking aim at the Liberal leader for advocating they be built province-wide automatically.
You throw a 4-story tower up in a tight-knit community with housing, they'll lose their minds, mark my words. But they can...
Oh no, if a fourplex goes up in your neighborhood, people, they're just going to lose their minds because, only poors would live in something like that. And they have houses. So only people who can afford to live in houses should be able to live in neighborhoods with houses. How dare we put up a fourplex and how hideous that is. Like, just imagine the riffraff that would come in because of it. What absolute utter garbage this guy is.
On doing that, destroying communities, because Bonnie...
Yeah, it would destroy communities to have a fourplex as opposed to, build a community. Just a piece of garbage.
Crombie thinks she knows better. I'm going to listen to the communities.
But Bonnie Crombie isn't the only one pushing for policy that would allow fourplexes and 4-story buildings to be constructed in communities across Ontario without municipal approval. The government's own housing task force found it would be the quickest way to boost housing in existing neighborhoods, but the Premier has ruled it out.
This is a no-brainer. You don't put 4, 6, 8-story buildings in the middle of a community of...
No, actually, it is a no-brainer that you should be adding those into the middle of a community because that's like an ideal place to put them. In a community close to resources and transit and other people and have neighbors. And how does having a 4-story building in a neighborhood destroy the neighborhood? No, you're talking about the type of people that would be living in there. That's what he's talking about. The kind of people that have to move into those would destroy the neighborhood. That's what he means.
Single dwelling homes. Don't build it in people's backyards. They will lose their minds. But I have an idea. Bonnie Crombie can run on that. I'll run on protecting communities.
It's very sad that the Premier would play politics with people's lives.
And that's Bonnie Crombie right there, and we'll get back to this in a moment.
Very sad indeed. We need to get housing built. Whoever recommends it, if the idea is a good one, I would run with it.
Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie says the Premier's concerns about tall towers and...
Okay, so just note, they've already said a couple times in this video, Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie. This has been said a couple times in this video, and it's like, look, Ford takes aim at Crombie for advocating for fourplexes, and we'll get to my point about this in the next video.
in single-family suburbs are unfounded. Typically, fourplexes are 2 to 2.5-story buildings, not 6 or 8.
Sorry, what exactly is hideous about this? It looks kind of nice. I also just noticed this video only has 16 likes. I hit the like button so I can like ratio city news. But what is so offensive about buildings like this? Oh, right, it's the people that move into those buildings that would destroy the neighborhood.
Suburbs are unfounded. Typically, fourplexes are 2 to 2.5-story buildings, not 6 or 8.
The fourplexes that we recommend would have a maximum of height to accommodate 4 units, but frankly, they could be 2 stories and still accommodate 4 units. So there is a lot of choice. But the bottom line is we need to build more housing and it needs to be affordable.
The housing minister tells us there's been virtually no uptake since the government allowed triplexes to be built as of right back in 2022. But advocacy group Environmental Defense says that's because of the government's own policies restricting height and depth.
This is a triplex legalization in name only. You have to allow height, you have to allow a more floor space index, as the city of Toronto did, you have to allow slightly deeper buildings. These are all things, they are physical changes, but they're perfectly compatible with existing neighborhoods.
The federal housing minister also calling on the Ford government to reverse course on its fourplex decision, saying they've chosen red tape and the status quo rather than taking the housing crisis seriously. For City News, I'm Tina Yazdiani.
And then we'll get to this video. Okay, so there's going to be a lot of repeated stuff in this video, but there's a point in here that I want to get to. A little peeve, a pet peeve of mine that I mentioned in my last video that it's again really poignant here.
Calls to allow fourplexes in neighborhoods across Ontario, calling it a huge mistake that would anger residents of single-family suburbs.
We can skip.
The remarks
Premier NIMBY is basically saying we're going to put speculators ahead of homes at ordinary.
So we have Mike Schreiner here. He's the Ontario Green Party leader.
People can afford in the communities they know and love.
We've got a NIMBY conservative government led by a NIMBY premier.
Doug Ford dubbed the Not in My Backyard or NIMBY premier after making these comments at a housing announcement in Richmond Hill this morning.
I can assure you 1,000%, you go in the middle of communities and start putting up 4-story, 6-story, 8-story buildings, and right deep into the communities, there's going to be a lot of shouting and screaming. That's a massive mistake.
But allowing fourplex.
Yeah, all these privileged people will be so upset. They'll be like yelling and screaming, like, how dare you put this up in my neighborhood? Like, papa, you know, like just totally, you know, it disrupts my skyline, you know, that I used to be able to see further. And the type of people that would be in those buildings. Ew.
As of right across Ontario is one of the key recommendations from the government's own Housing Affordability Task Force that found it will get more housing built in existing neighborhoods more quickly than any other measure.
It's off the table for us. We're going to build homes, single dwelling homes, townhomes.
Mansions that nobody can afford because his developer buddies make more money off of them. And let's just pave over the greenbelt while we're at it.
That's what we're going to focus on.
I think that the Premier's comments today about fourplexes are frankly outrageous and
there. You see it right there, briefly.
Actually deeply insulting. Not
then it goes
every
away.
Ontarian can afford a single-family detached home. That is not the way we're going to solve this housing crisis.
Earlier this week, Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie pushed for fourplex legislation to be adopted.
Sorry, what was that? City News? What was it? Let's go back.
That's what we're going to focus on.
I think that the Premier's comments today about fourplexes are frankly outrageous and actually housing crisis.
Earlier this week, Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie pushed for fourplex legislation to be adopted across the province.
Hey, City News. Who's this? Who's this that you didn't introduce in the video? Who's this person? You said Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie here. Who's this? You can say it's City TV. It's really okay to say, I know blonde, middle-aged white women all kind of look the same, but these are two different people. Huh, City News? Who's this? You mention her. You don't mention her. And then if we go back to this video, we have Ford takes aim
dwelling home
at Crombie for advocating for fourplexes. And in this video, at least twice, they say Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie. Who's this? You can say it with your out loud voice, City News. I'm so fucking fed up with that with the news. Okay, that was Merritt Stiles, the leader of the Ontario NDP, the official opposition that City News just neglected to mention by name. And her name only just briefly showed up there on the screen. But Bonnie Crombie gets mentioned over and over again in Doug Ford's fight with Bonnie Crombie, the Liberal leader, Bonnie Crombie. The Liberal Party doesn't even have party status. They have 9 seats in the legislature. You need 12 to be official party status in the legislature. But over and over again, it's Bonnie Crombie, Bonnie Crombie, Bonnie Crombie. But never do they actually just say Merritt Stiles, the leader of the official opposition, the Ontario NDP. How often do we actually hear that? And like I say, I always add in this little disclaimer, I have my issues with the NDP. Federally, provincially, across the country, I have my issues with them. But to make them invisible in the media over and over again, when they are the official opposition and have way more seats than the Liberals, you might want to be talking to her a little bit more. Just saying. So fed up with the news and the media doing this over and over again to the NDP. Just absolutely disgusting bias reporting from the mainstream media on that one. But yeah, we didn't need to watch much more of that video because it was just repeating a lot of what was said, including Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie. Anyway, I think that is it for today with the news that I wanted to cover. There's a bunch of other stuff, but, you know, ended off in little tangents with Jeff. It was just wonderful having him on, and some of the things that we were talking about was really good. The Peanut Butter Solution, and Last Unicorn, movies people have to go out and see now. So, as I've mentioned before, I'm officially kind of cutting back to 2 shows a week, which is Wednesdays and Sundays. That said, of course, my very next Wednesday, I'm busy. So my next live stream will not be on Wednesday. It will actually be on Tuesday at 6 p.m. Because I still want to get those 2 live streams in per week. But this upcoming Wednesday, I just happen to be busy in the evening, so I won't be able to to do it on Wednesday. So it will be Tuesday instead. And then it should be the following Sunday. We'll see how it goes. Yeah, just super frustrating with all of that. And the idea that a 4-plex will somehow destroy a community as opposed to actually building on one. Oh. Media. Anyway, let's check the Sandbox. I don't know how many people are even in here right now. Ooh, 25 watching. Thank you, everyone, for coming out. Really appreciate it. Lynn. Oh, right. I forgot. Need to show up and scream at Ford. Yeah. Let's see. Go up quite a bit. Grand Theft Autobot, I don't know if this is a problem or if this is anecdotal, but I signed up for affordable housing and was on the list for 10 years with no end in sight until I gave up and just didn't renew. No, it's not anecdotal. That is a reality. In my area, you could be waiting 15 to 20 years for affordable housing. Those lists are long. And the thing is that once that unit becomes available to you, you have to take it no matter what, or you're put back to the bottom of the list. It's different areas are different lengths of time, but in most places you're looking 7 to 10 years at a bare minimum. At a bare minimum for affordable housing. the Fitzinator? I haven't seen you in the Sandbox before. Welcome. I read an article in The Guardian that stated that even in the 70s, social housing was seen as the future on both sides of the aisle. Then the Thatcher era happened, I think is what that's supposed to say. Same thing here. Social housing got drastically cut under Brian Mulroney, recently deceased. Good riddance. He was the start of the bigger cuts, but there was, ever since the 80s, it hasn't kept up. The social housing that we had in place wasn't keeping up with the times and the people and stuff of that sort. And then with Brian Mulroney, he just devastated it. And then here in Ontario, we also had Mike Harris, who worked with Brian Mulroney. So you had the provincial and the federal working together to destroy a lot of our social supports in this province. And we've never recovered. And the amount of money and effort it would take to get back to where we should be, as opposed to even growing upon what we had, it's going to cost a lot. And at some point, the government is just going to have to eat it and pay out and do what is needed just to get caught up to where we were 20 years ago. Shamigli, maybe lower the rent. Yes. I'm not a fan of rent freeze. I'm a fan of rent reduction. Because a rent freeze right now isn't good enough. Most people can't afford rents. Like, most people are precariously renting, precariously housed. That so much of our income goes towards rent that it leaves nothing for living your life, having decent groceries, entertainment, going out, meeting people, vacationing, doing all the things that make life enjoyable. More and more people are finding they don't have money for that, and it's really sad, because there should be more to life than just, waking up, going to work, coming home, trying to unwind, doing chores, going back to bed, then waking up, going to work, coming home, trying to unwind, doing some chores, going back. Like, there has to be more to life than that. Then even the small landlords can afford more than one home. Yeah, my heart, there's only like such a small, teeny tiny amount of landlords that I would have any sympathy for. And it's quite literally like they had to convert part of their house in order to just not go unhoused themselves. The people who bought extra properties or inherited extra properties, nah, you did it to yourself. That's your fault. That's your call. You did that. UV Power, if you have to get a mortgage to own an extra house, you shouldn't be a landlord, as you'll pass on that cost to your tenants, in my opinion. And that's usually what happens. So, no, people buying homes just to rent them out is, no, landlord corporations, people who do that just to make a quick dollar, no. We need more people being able to buy their own homes, which means fewer people just buying extra properties for the sole purpose of turning it into a rental. And just no, on so many levels, no. Just so frustrating, because you have these large landlord corporations that just go and buy up all the market, which is leaving fewer and fewer available for individual people and families to buy a home, and it makes it harder and more expensive. And this housing crisis is going to come to a tipping point, and I'm actually quite shocked it hasn't gotten there yet. And the longer it goes on, the bigger it's going to build up, and the explosion is just going to be so much worse when it finally does let loose. You know, the people will riot. Good. It's overdue. Something has to be done. The anti-corporatus, actually, my wife was scared to have to fix up the old house and have to sell it. So when one of our friends proposed to rent to own it from us, she jumped at it. Yeah, that's not a typical landlord situation then. It's kind of helping somebody, like if I know that you're being genuine with it. So if somebody is like genuinely in a rent to own situation and not just doing it for the sake of their own property, you're basically helping someone buy their own home. And that's not the problem. That's not a typical landlord either. So yeah, it is. There's never an umbrella term for everything. Like nothing ever fits under one umbrella. But when I say landlords, what I mean are the ones that are just using it as passive income and choosing to get into the business and, you know, choosing to make other people's lives more difficult by hiking up the rent, any opportunity they get, every way they can find to just get more money, squeeze more money out of the people. I find that disgusting. That, you know, what kind of person goes into that? You know, to have somebody's life in your hands like that. Because people need homes to survive. And to have that kind of power over people, that's just disgusting. Badash 29, fun fact, most small businesses fail. That's what a landlord is, a small business owner. Yes, they made the choice to get into it. They did that gamble. You know, if they didn't have the foresight to look at the market and see where things are going and do the research into how difficult it was, that's on them. The Fitzinator, who's going to buy out these small landlords when they try to sell? If the government doesn't step in, there will be more corporate consolidation. Yes. We need the government to actually just... they do that thing with the land where they can appropriate the land under certain circumstances in a housing crisis. I think it's totally fair to be able to do that to landlords. Is that what it's called when they take the land? Because the government says that it's needed. There's a term for it. But I think during a housing crisis, I think that's totally fair to do that to landlords or people who have extra properties that are just sitting empty. I think it's totally fair for the government to say, okay, we're just taking it. We're acquiring it because it's needed to solve this crisis. Jeannie Bottle. Don't think I've seen you in the Sandbox before, so welcome. I'm seeing a lot of new faces or names in here, so welcome everyone who's new to Left of the Box. So Jeannie Bottle says, outlaw massive greed, or is that too biblical an idea? Yeah, we would no longer have a government because they're all a bunch of greedy bastards. As Bad Lefty says, greedy bastards. Shamikli, not looking forward to being old and homeless, to be honest. Yeah, there's that's one thing I can't get over, people not looking, again, not having the foresight to look at how older people in this country are treated when they have to go into long-term care homes or affordable units and things of that sort, and just seeing the treatment and the conditions that they live in. And not enough people are looking at that and thinking, you know what, maybe we should solve it now before it happens to me. You know, even because if they don't have the conscience to do it just because it's the right thing to do, at least do it for selfish reasons. But Lynn, I wasn't planning on making it past mid-20s. I'm still here at 40. Why? Yeah, it's weird how life can just happen sometimes. I wasn't expecting to live as long as I have been either. Still trying to figure out the why myself. Lynn, while turning 35 allowed me to tell people I really did know my own mind about refusing to reproduce. That is something I can never get over, is, you know, other people just telling people, oh, but you want a baby, you'll want a baby, you want to get a baby. Because I used to get that when I mentioned I didn't have kids, and I'm like, oh, I don't want them. And they're like, oh, you don't want them yet, but you will. You will. Luckily, there was no family pressure, and I wasn't, you know, I don't get out much, and I'm not usually in those situations where I'm talking casually to people. So there's never really a pressure put on me. But I got my tubes tied when I was 25 with no kids, which is a rarity, but only because of the fondness this country has for eugenics. My doctor said, given your mental health background, I don't think it'll be a problem to push through. And 3 weeks later, it was done. Best decision of my life. Can't imagine how horrible my life would be with kids. That's not something I'm equipped, capable, desiring to do. I still occasionally get nightmares of being pregnant. Like, it's just best decision in my life was to never have kids. Also, best decision in any potential child I might have life that I didn't have them. Because I'd be a horrible parent. Zero PE, see, this is why I want to be taken out when I get to that age, because I know we will not be a socialist economy by then either. Pretty dark thoughts. I can't have any counter arguments at the moment, but we just got to keep working for it, working towards it, pushing for it. Because who knows, maybe if there's a complete and utter collapse, it's going to be us who rebuilds from the ashes. And we'll get that Star Trek utopia. I've been watching a lot of Star Trek lately. Also, X-Men. I decided to go watch the cartoon. Oh, wow. The original from the 90s. That show is gay as fuck. All the right-wing people talking about X-Men 97 and how woke it's become. It's like, did you watch the original? I'm only in season 2, and I'm like, so everyone is queer. Everyone. Just everyone. And this is so political and statement and ideological. Like, this is the most wokeness I have ever seen in my entire life. Teddy Cool, I'm moving to Canada if Trump wins. Don't blame you. As I keep on saying, you know, things aren't necessarily great up here, but far better than the United States. Relatively speaking, it is a socialist utopia up here compared to the United States, but it's not quite a socialist utopia. Okay, it's far from a socialist utopia, but we're working on it. You know, when I get a Majority Report Canadian edition going, you know, we'll make this a socialist utopia up here. Yeah, I am the Majority Report on their 20th anniversary special. I also emailed them and I DM'd the Majority Report and I tweeted it out to try to make sure that they would read my comment on air. And then they did, and I'm like, was that too much? Did I do too much? You know, the whole autism kicking in. Like, was that appropriate level of IM that I sent in? Because it was a bit long compared to other people who were IMing the show, and I don't know if what I said in it was really appropriate for what the show was and the tone and everything. And so now I'm like second guessing if I should have even done it at all. Because I have a hard time gauging what's appropriate. And it's like, did it really fit the mood of the show? They read it and I appreciate it, but was it wrong for me to want that, to use it to mention, you know, instead of just congratulating them on 20 years, to tell them how that show helped improve my life and make it about me? Like, was I making it about me, or was I really, you know, my point, like my hope was to let them know how important and valuable they are because they changed my life for the better? But am I overthinking? Sometimes just I want to be able to just have a conversation so I can relay this information as opposed to just trying to IM it and squish it all into a few words. But yeah, Majority Report had that 20th anniversary show. At least they did chuckle when I said, you know, my dream is to make a Canadian version of the Majority Report to take the pressure off of them to cover Canadian stories. That did get a chuckle out of them, which was nice. I still don't know what I would call it. I wouldn't be like, if that dream were to happen, it wouldn't be done on this channel. Like, I'd have to make a separate channel so that any income made for it would go towards that channel and set up like a whole different thing, as opposed to, because other people would have to be involved, and so the income that I make from this channel goes to me. But if I were to start trying to do that on this channel, then anyone that, so it would be easier to make it into its own channel so that it's a better split of where monies and stuff are going and resources and all that sort of stuff. I still don't know what I would call it though. Because, you know, the Maple Report is just too cliche. Just too cliche. Also, I need to get past my inability to network and, you know, my irritation at working with others. Those are things that would have to be overcome. But yeah, the thought of having a show where it's like the first half is an interview with a Canadian activist, journalist, author, professional, and then the second half is like a call-in show, but also focusing on Canadian stories and stuff. Like, yeah, that's what I want to do. And having like a co-host and producer so I don't do all of the work. That would be nice. Although I still would have a really hard time letting them do all of the work because I'm somewhat particular about it. Somewhat controlling. Difficult to work with. I'm not selling myself right now very good here, but I'm very difficult to work with. I don't do well with bosses either. Which is why I would be the boss. I don't know what kind of boss I would be. Hopefully a nice one. Hopefully. Let's see. Bad Lefty, as a former addict, you can't force sobriety, idiots. I am very fortunate that I've never been addicted to anything more severe than caffeine. And even I know that. I know that from all the people I've known who have had addiction in their life, that you can't just, like, even with my mental health issues and people demanding at certain times that I go and get certain types of help for my mental health issues. And it's like, you can't force me into counseling if it's not the right time for me or it's not the right kind for me. It won't help. It'll just actually make things worse. And addiction is a mental health issue, so you can't just force people to get healthy like that. It's a process. But part of it is you have to start making the conditions around the person favorable for them to come out of the addiction. Like, what's waiting on the other side? Because it's traumatic. getting out of an addiction, with the withdrawal and the reason why they got addicted in the first place, having to deal with those traumas that led to that. And, you know, and again, the withdrawal can be traumatic. Like, it's not just a simple thing of you just quit it and move on. There's so much that has to be dealt with. And if you don't deal with those other underlying conditions, then all you've done is put a temporary pause on the addiction, and it won't be long before people go back to it. Because, like, not only is it's just the habit, like, they have to replace, you have to have new routines in place, and new supports and places that don't, you know, trigger the desire to go back into it. Like, it's a whole process, and it takes a lot of support and people around you to get over an addiction. It's just the idea that they just want to brush their hands of it. That's all the government wants to do, is just, okay, we did our part, and if they fail at this, they basically deserve to die. Is what Blaine Higgs. We have the whitest sounding men in our government as leaders, because you have like Blaine Higgs, you have Scott Moe, Doug Ford, Tim Houston. Like, my God, could you get any more white male than that? Even Justin Trudeau. Like, Shamigli. Oh no, poor NIMBYs will be mad. Yeah, it's kind of like, oh no, we can't have equality. That might upset the TERFs. If we use the term birthing people, the TERFs might get mad if we do that. Bigoted people, privileged people, you know, people who don't like poor people might get mad if we do something to help them. Grand Theft Autobot, bees, get forward. Yes, I know what you're talking about. The bee that nearly killed him, or at least tried to. Put in a very good effort. Badash 29, you build up, not out, Doug. If anything, making more neighborhoods just takes valuable farmland away. Yes, he's also the one that wants to build over the Greenbelt and actually pave over part of Lake Ontario. I've clipped that into its own video from my last live stream, where part of his new redevelopment of Ontario Place would include filling in part of Lake Ontario. Yeah, we need to be building up, not out. And maybe I'm a little bit biased, because do I like the idea of a house? Sure. If I win the lottery, millions of dollars or something. The idea of having my own home with multiple rooms and lots of space, it is appealing. But in practicality, I'd have to keep that clean. I'm not that good at that part. Having, you know, living in an apartment, I don't have to worry about maintenance. I don't have to worry about lawn care or shoveling or anything. Like, there's so many advantages to just, you know, renting. But, you know, if I had a bigger house, then he would get more room to run around in. So that's definitely a huge advantage, and the only reason why I would want a big house. But I don't need a big house. It would just, sure, it'd be nice, but I don't need it. I'm fine living in apartment buildings like this one. I'd be fine living in a fourplex. Come here. Dream Hair Dream Machine? New name, welcome to the Sandbox. Developers are taking advantage of the situation, though, by pushing for deregulation. Those fourplexes mean nothing if no one can afford them. Yes, there'll be luxury plexes, like they make luxury condos and luxury rentals, which are all just a way of saying we put in some fancy things so that we can charge people twice the market rate for them, which doesn't help the housing crisis. Oh, for those of you who are new, this here is Lanier. Yeah. Say hi, Lanier. He's so cute. He has a little white goatee. No, you have to show your little goatee first. You can sort of see it right there. His little pointy goatee there. He's so cute. I adopted him last summer from a rescue. And if you know the reference to Lanier, you're my kind of people. Mars Falcon, eventually, maybe soon, poverty will be made illegal and poor people will be treated as criminal, possibly forced into slave labor or a similar venture so that they can be put to better use. I'm leaning towards the maybe soon part of that, because they're basically doing everything to criminalize poor people other than saying we're criminalizing poor people. Like, you can't sleep in certain areas. You can't do this. You can't, you know, go into an encampment. You can't try to do this and this and this in order to survive. And yet you're supposed to work at some job that won't even pay enough to give you an apartment. But, you know, but then you'll end up going to prison, and in prison, that's where the corporations, because even in Canada, we do that. We do that. We have labor in our prisons that, you know, don't pay them nearly enough. It's, yeah, where do you think you get your license plates from in Ontario? And then they charge them $20 to make a phone call. The Fitzinator, I'm skeptical of claims of low housing supply. From my knowledge, we haven't had a massive population growth. I think the rent is high because interest rates went up and those costs get passed on to renters. It's a combination of things, but it has been pointed out that there are 6 empty homes for every unhoused person. So when they say that there's a low housing supply, like low rental supply, what they mean are available to the public. Because there can be lots of units that are empty, but they're just not on the market. Whereas if everything that was empty was on the market, we'd have a large supply available to us right now. So to say that it's a low supply is a little misleading, but there has been some population growth. And the housing, especially the social housing that we used to have, hasn't been keeping up with it. And so we do need new units, but we need units like the fourplexes within the cities, building up, not out, so that we can actually build stronger communities and denser communities and communities with a variety of wonderful people in it. And, you know, you do that, then you take away the power from the people that are just buying up these properties for an investment. Because if the government were to actually get into gear and start building all this extra housing, then those empty units that people are sitting on, hoping to, you know, turn a profit later on, their value decreases drastically to the point, hopefully, that it wouldn't be very logical for them to keep on with it and eventually sell it too. But it is a multi-tier problem. Lynn, Shriner shows up on his bike in full rain gear. That's the Green Party. Ah, so I take it. Oh, I'm not going to say. I know where he's an MPP for. The Fitzinator, but I haven't seen much data, to be honest. Yeah, it's a combination. It's not, like, that's the thing. It's never just one thing. A lot of people like to blame the immigrants for the high costs of renting and housing and stuff. And there is some truth to a contribution, like it does contribute, but it's not the problem. So a lot of things contribute to the overall problem, but there's no one thing that is the problem that if we solve that one thing, then everything will be okay. And again, that's why we have the problem of we need the municipal, provincial, and federal working together to solve these problems, because there is no one solution. And it was a problem caused by all three levels of government. Atticus among us, so sorry you can't afford housing, but we complain about sleeping on sidewalks in the same run-on sentence. Yeah. How dare you not afford to be able to live anywhere and then live wherever you can go, but I don't want you to live there because, you know, it doesn't look nice and I don't like having to walk past that and be reminded. Yeah. Badash 29, we also need to rework our cities to be more eco-friendly and incorporate nature into our cities and towns, build around the nature. There's that. We also need to build for the climate change that's happening. So keep in mind things like, oops, just dropped something that the cat is now going to go play with. It's not something the cat can break, so I'll let him play with it for now. So we need to be building places that can better absorb water for when there's the flash rains and flash floods, ones that can withstand the heat and the cold better, because the climate change is just getting out of control and a lot of our infrastructure can't handle it. So we need infrastructure that can handle the stronger storms, the more extremes, you know, be better insulated for people so that they don't have to spend gazillion dollars on heating and air conditioning, you know, to have natural ways of, you know, keeping a house insulated and a building insulated. Like all of that needs to be incorporated. Donna Trans Day of Visibility to you. Happy Trans Day of Visibility to you too. I swear I still need to put that disclaimer up on my Sandbox that I will not be able to pronounce people's names. I am so bad for that. Just so bad. Okay, so. Oh, I hope he didn't take it into the litter bin. He just went into the litter bin. I hope he didn't take my ring into the litter bin. No, it's still on the floor over there, so. Okay, so it should be fine. It should be fine. But welcome, everyone. Everyone who's a regular, everyone who's new. Thank you so much for coming out and checking me out. Normally, I'm going to try to have 2 live streams a week. Normally, they would be on Wednesday and Sunday, but of course, this upcoming Wednesday, I have something else in the evening I need to attend to. So my next live stream will be Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern. That's usually when I try to have them, is at 6 p.m. Eastern. Today I started later because I was joined by the wonderful Jeff Wiggins. You can go check out his stuff. I forgot to put it in the description box, but I will do that right after this. I'll add it to the description box. The contact to his YouTube channel, We Gonna Be Alright. You can also catch him regularly on the Power Report with Dan from the Internet. He's on there all the time. Let's see. There we go. So if you have the extra money, and only if you have the extra money, you can please become a patron. Link in the description box below. You can find me on all of these social medias over here, but primarily this one. The hostile fart sauna, known as Twitter. Well, X, but I still refer to as Twitter. I'm on there a lot. You can find me there. I also do artwork. You can check it out at SandeeLovas.com. Still looking to have my second customer, my first customer being my mom. I'm still looking to build that business, that small business. Commission pencil portraits of pets and people. They're not cheap, but they're well worth the money. They're reasonably priced for what they are, which is really incredible artwork. So you can go there and check it out. Also, on my YouTube channel, on the playlist tab, if you go to the playlist tab, you'll find one called Art Shorts. You'll see some of my magic drawings where you see a time lapse of the drawings, which is always really cool to see. So you can see the process of how my drawings come to life. You'll probably recognize some of the people I've drawn. There's a few people that are very recognizable for those of us who are on the online left. Also, to help celebrate Trans Day of Visibility and Easter, you can help me celebrate both of them by going to my Amazon wish list, linked in the description box below, and buying me some Easter candy. Easter is my favorite candy holiday, and I have a lot of chocolate and Easter stuff on there that, you can help me celebrate by buying me some of that. It goes a long, long way because I nibble on chocolate. I do. I do not binge eat chocolate. So, a bag of Cadbury mini eggs lasts me a long time. Even a chocolate bunny lasts me a long, long time because I chop them up and then eat them in little bits and pieces. So any help from that would just help brighten my day. But on my wish list, I also have things to help build my studio, this YouTube studio here, my art studio with art supplies, things for my cats to help make me, because I have 3 wonderful fur babies. You just saw Lanier. There's also Abernathy, who might make an appearance if I call him. Abernathy, come here. Frodo, who is my old guy. He's 16 years old. His health is... his health isn't great. He is on his way out, but he's still doing well. He's on medication so that he's still eating and drinking, and as long as that's happening, he's okay. But he has kidney disease. Oh, Abernathy, come here. Come on, I saw you. Come in here. But he is my world, Frodo. So his name is Frodo. And he's 16, and he is just... he's my world. So any help with his vet bills would also be greatly appreciated. Because I have to keep him on medication and take him in for regular checkups. So to help out with that, there's a PayPal link in the description box below for just one-time payments. But also, if you're Canadian, an e-transfer to SandeeLovas@gmail.com to help with his vet bills would be greatly appreciated. Let's see. I think that's it. So went through that. Also, thank you to the Serfs for shouting me out today and also doing a fundraiser for Trans Day of Visibility. Appreciate the support to the community. As somebody who's non-binary and queer, polyamorous, living with disabilities and poverty, I appreciate the solidarity and the support. And Articus Among Us just saying, "You're his Sam, Sandy," to Frodo. Yes. Frodo is my world. He is my world. That cat. He's been with me through so much. And I keep on getting distracted by the chat, the Sandbox, because I want to keep on looking at that and responding to people, but I need to be going, so... because this is streaming a lot later than I normally do, and I need to start unwinding for the evening, which means I'm probably going to go and watch more of the X-Men because I'm really liking it. I'm liking it. I'm liking the vibe of it. Okay, so until Tuesday, salut, à la prochaine. Thank you for watching and stay tuned. I'm Sandy, wishing your tomorrow is better than your today. Oh, and thank you to all you awesome mods. You rock. You do.